All right, thank you. So we will call this November 2nd, wow, we're already in November, November 2nd Joint Transportation Highways Military Affairs Committee to order. Before we get started too far, we'll just say welcome to Representative Obermueller, who's joining us remotely. And then also just want to start off by saying thank you to the staff at LSO for the amount of hard work you guys have put in over the interim. As we go through the rest of the day today, it's quite apparent to me, and I think I speak on behalf of the other chairman, how much work you guys have put in. Just want to say thank you guys very much for all the hard work that you guys have done. Brian?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may have your indulgence, we actually, members of the committee, we have two new staff members at LSO that I'd like to quickly introduce. So first, Eve Hamilton is our newest legislative editor. She's originally from Pennsylvania, graduate of Wyoming Catholic College, and worked in journalism before joining us earlier this year. And then next to Heather is Clay Caldwell. He's originally from Rock Springs, a graduate of Western Wyoming Community College, as well as the University of Wyoming. He worked in the Peace Corps and as a data analyst before joining LSO as a research analyst. So he's in our research and evaluation division.
Well, fantastic. Welcome to both of you, and welcome to Cheyenne, but also welcome to Wyoming. So I'm not sure how long you've been here, but I probably got the good taste of winter already. So yeah, all right. Well, welcome, and again, just thank you, Brian, for the introductions as well. But again, my sincere gratitude to LSO staff. For those that may not know, we have basically one staff member for every two legislators in this state, which is almost exact opposite of what most legislatures have across the country. So you guys pick up a lot of extra work and do a lot of extra work for us. So thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman, before we roll the roll call, you got any opening remarks?
We're good.
Or you're not vice, you're co.
I know what you meant.
Yeah, we're
It's fine.
too many other committees. So with that, if we can get a roll call, please.
Senator Brennan? Here. Senator Furphy?
Here.
Senator Cole?
Present.
Senator Pappas?
Here.
Representative Berger?
Here.
Representative Nemec?
Here.
Representative Obermueller?
Here.
Representative O'Hearn?
Here.
Representative Pendergraft?
Here.
Representative Smith?
Here.
Representative Stivar?
Present.
Representative Wiley?
Here.
Co-Chairman Boner?
Here.
Chairman Brown?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. And normally we have a little script up here. I don't feel like I have to go through it every single time, but I will remind everybody we are adults. So we will act as such. Please no cheering and jeering if there's something that you like or don't like, and let's all be respectable adults as we go through this. I think the first item is so contentious here as we go through this that we might have that. So have to make sure we remind everybody. Committee, welcome. Thank you for those who made it from out of town. Hopefully the roads were good for you guys all as you came down or came across the state. Happy to have you all here. And with that, we will go ahead and kick this off. We do have what I will consider light days, but they are packed tight. So we are going to try to keep to a pretty tight schedule. So I am going to ask for testimony as well as public comment to be brief, concise, have your points ready to go. But we do have a hard stop at 12:30 for lunch so we can get committee members to some lunch, and then we have a 1:30 tour for the committee members that is a pretty hard start. So we want to make sure that we are working quickly through that. I will shut my mouth now, and we will welcome Legislative Service Office. I don't know if this is Talise. You've got this, okay? So you're going to be going over our Bill Draft 24 LSO 247, the plane coordinate system. And then Ms. Rogers, if you'd like to take a seat while she's going through the bill, we have you up next. And then also Mr. Sheehan, if you'd like to join as well. And Talise, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and then take us through the bill, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, LSO. I'm presenting Bill Draft 24 LSO 247, Plane Coordinate System Amendments. This bill draft updates the plane coordinate system for Wyoming. It eliminates all references to the Wyoming Coordinate System NAD 1983 and provides for the most recent version. Page 1 creates Wyoming Statute 3425-109, which provides for definitions. These definitions are outlined on page 2, including metadata, NGS, NSRS, and Wyoming Plane Coordinate System. Page 3 amends Wyoming Statute 3425-101 to provide that the most recent version of the state plane coordinate system for the state of Wyoming that has been established by NGS based on the NSRS for defining and stating the positions or locations of points on the surface of the earth within the state of Wyoming shall be known as the Wyoming Plane Coordinate System. Wyoming Statute 3425-102 is amended to provide that the plane coordinates shall consist of two distances expressed in feet and decimals of a foot or meters and decimals of a meter, and the metadata of the observations used to determine the coordinates. This section is also amended to provide for a y-axis and x-axis, a conversion factor of 1 foot to meters, an explanation of height, and the official geodetic datums to which geodetic coordinates are referenced. Page 5 amends Wyoming Statute 3425-103 to provide that when any tract of land extends from one zone into other zones, the positions of all the points on its boundaries shall be referred to as only one of the zones. This section is also amended to provide that the zone used shall be specifically named in the description, and the metadata of the observations shall also be included. Wyoming Statute 3425-105 is amended to provide that the method and source for establishing coordinates shall be described in the land or deed record. Wyoming Statutes 3425-106 and 3525-107 on pages 6 and 7 removes references to the Wyoming Coordinate System NAD 1983 and replaces it with the Wyoming Plane Coordinate System. Wyoming Statute 3425-108 is amended on page 8 to provide that the provisions of this chapter shall not be construed to prohibit the appropriate use of other datums, other geodetic reference networks or systems, or other plane coordinate systems, and require the revision of any survey deed record or document prepared or recorded before July 1, 2024 that used the Wyoming Coordinate System NAD 1983 or any other coordinate system previously authorized. Section 3 repeals Wyoming Statute 3425-101B and 3425-104. The repealed provisions are replicated on pages 9 through 11 for the committee's reference. Section 4 on page 11 provides an effective date of July 1, 2024, and I'll stand for any questions.
Committee, I know you guys are all early in the morning, and I know you remember everything that was talked to you about by Ms. Rogers at the beginning of last meeting. So as our brains were frying from the end of that meeting, and we're starting up a brand new day today, is there any questions for Ms. Hanson on the bill draft itself? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Hanson. So we will turn this over now. We'll let the two of you, Ms. Rogers and Mr. Sheehan, we'll let you guys go ahead and take the reins from here. And if you'll kind of walk us through maybe a 80,000 foot level of exactly what we're doing here and why this is so important to get.
Good morning, Chairman Brown and Co-Chair Boner and members of the committee. I am Karen Rogers. I am the Geospatial Program Manager for the Bureau of Land Management, Wyoming State Office. And as you know, I cannot endorse any legislation. I'm here purely as a subject matter expert to give you my opinion on this legislation and impacts to the state. But are the slides up? Can you bring up my slides?
You have slides.
I did
If you
provide
can bring
slides.
those up for reference.
Thank you. So yeah, this is not the most invigorating topic, so I thought I'd go through a little refresher to make sure that we're current on what it is we're talking about, and as Chairman Brown said, the impact and importance of it. So the National Geodetic Survey is a branch of the U.S. Geological Survey. I'm sorry, it's a branch of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that is in charge of maintaining and improving a geodetic control network. And they do that through the national, the NSRS, the National Spatial Reference System. And that is just an imaginary grid that lays over the United States and its territories that is a coordinate system so that, you know, everyone is using the same reference frame for how they map things, how XYZ coordinates are assigned. And through time, they measure the center of the earth and how that affects how things are mapped on the surface of the earth. And certain times when they feel like the science is right and their model can get no better, they put a date stamp on it and say, this is our datum. This is, you know, the main reference that everyone should use from this point forward. So through time, there's been the North American datum of 1927, NAD 27, and then there was NAD 83. And so this is the latest iteration of updating the datum that is to be used by the professional surveying and engineering communities, and subsequently the GIS communities. So technology continues to improve and change, and so we don't expect that this will be the last datum ever created by NGS. And that's important when we talk later about future-proofing the legislation. And so again, datums are important to all the mapping sciences, to surveying, engineering, and GIS professions. But the benefit of the state plane coordinate systems is that they are extremely accurate. They are meant to be used at a very zoomed in scale. And so the legislation that you have before you is to adopt the new datum. And the state plane coordinate systems were designed by professional surveyors in each of the states and territories. So surveyors such as Dr. Stoughton next to me proposed their state plane coordinate system zones, and then those were refined in coordination with NGS. And so when you look at a map, and I should have put one in my PowerPoint, but you can dial up NGS SPSC 2022, the state plane coordinate system of 2022, and it'll show you a map of the United States with all the zones that each state is going to get with this new datum and coordinate system. So Wyoming has 6. Other states, Utah has 96, Colorado has 36. And so, the complexity is highly variable. But again, those were determined by professionals in each state working in conjunction with NGS. So it was a very collaborative effort to land on where we are with our 6 zones. And so the impacts from adopting this legislation are largely positive. I could not think of any negative impacts to the state from adopting the legislation. So those, again, it's most beneficial to the engineering and professional surveying professions who they create the data. They are out there surveying, making designs for bridges, highways. When they create those data, they are already indicating what datum they're using. So it's no additional impact or cost to them to check a different box compared to the box that they're checking now. The multitude of infrastructure projects that we expect that happen every day, and we expect to increase as a result of Bill IRA fund money, depend on those highly accurate measurements that surveyors and engineers do. And so having those projects be more accurate and precise is highly beneficial. And a lot of these projects are going to cross state lines. Pipelines, fiber optic lines, highway reconstructions, those cross state lines. And so it's important for us to be on the same page as our neighboring states so that plans from one state align with plans from within Wyoming as they meet at our state boundary. Private parcels are mapped more accurately with the new datum, and public-private land delineation will be more accurate thanks to SPSC 2022. So again, there were no anticipated negative impacts or financial consequence to state agencies as a result of this. And it is in particular beneficial to WYDOT to use the same standard as surrounding states. Like I said, when you think of highway construction or other projects that WYDOT is involved with. Adopting SPSC 2022 makes business interoperable, again, within the state and across state lines, and it will save time and money by having everyone on the same page and having, again, everyone on using the same sheet of music. So impacts or risks from not approving this legislation include, again, when those projects misalign, then that will impact costs and timelines. And so those are the potential costs to the state are, if you don't approve this legislation, there's a greater risk of projects being misaligned from us, from engineers, surveyors in the state using something different than what our neighbors are using. And another industry that is impacted is, our mining and oil and gas industries. They're constantly using surveyors and engineers for their construction plans, for their mining claims, and those would be less accurate as well. And again, risk to county and local governments for the data misaligning without that common standard. So I mentioned being future-proof. If you can go. Thank you. So many states have passed or expected to pass new legislation acknowledging the adoption of new datums as NGS releases them. And so it's important, we had the existing statute says NAD 83, NAD 83, NAD 83. We want to be agnostic and just say whatever is the latest datum, that is what we will use. And that is what is meant by future proof. And that is what this draft bill does. And it is considered best practice to have that so that we don't have to, I like you guys, but you have other things to do, more important things to do. So I'd be happy to not come back and address this in the future. So when we look to other states, we just did a survey of states across the country and where they are with adopting new legislation. And the number of states that have passed legislation that's future-proof is 7, and that includes Utah and Montana. States that have passed legislation that is not future-proof, in other words, they specified we're going to use SPSC 2022, that is 6 states, and that includes Idaho. 16 states have legislation in progress, and that includes Colorado and Nebraska. And then some states choose to go through regulations instead of actual statutes. And so those states with future-proof regulatory updates are 9, and then 7 states have updates that are not future-proof. So, Wyoming is very much in the pack, in the middle of the pack is when it comes to considering this and hopefully adopting it for the benefit of our mapping sciences across the state. And with that, I would take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Committee, do we have any questions over? Yes, Senator Kolb. Almost
Almost a
brought you back
representative.
down to us.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. Just, I guess, edification maybe to the public or to me also. What do you do to resolve conflicts when, say, you have a more accurate mapping system and then the accurate map doesn't reflect, I guess, what it changes the boundaries? What do you do when the boundaries change because the accuracy of your map now is different than it was before? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Rogers?
Senator Kolb, or Chairman Brown, Senator Kolb, that is a good question. And there are, as I understand, and I will let Dr. Stoughton chime in, there are procedures in place for professional surveyors to resolve those disputes. And that's why it's interesting, it's important to have metadata to document this is what was used for this survey and this is what's used for this survey, so that those discrepancies can be better understood. But I would defer to Dr. Stoughton.
The area that you ask is a very important question, and it's a matter of law. We have real property law in the board, and that addresses how to retrace, resolve conflicts, etc. In some states, and I haven't looked at the Wyoming one recently, well, it does because we have the NAD 8393. It can be permissively used, but one of the 2 parties involved does not have to accept it and have their descriptions in a different way. To answer that question. The second part, if there is a dispute as to the location by coordinates or by any other means, we go to the courts and resolve it by adjudication. And that is totally a place, we do it all the time. I would be surprised at your jurisdiction if you don't have 2 or 3 cases in some of your local courts now. So it does not interrupt that process. It does not change in any way, shape, or form the due process in the court system itself. Now, have I addressed all your concerns, sir? Mr. Chairman.
Senator?
I'm
And
sorry.
actually, Dr. Stoughton, if I can have you, just for the record, if I can have you introduce yourself, first and last name.
I'm Dr. Herbert W. Stoughton. I have academic degrees in civil engineering and geodetic engineering from the University of Michigan, plus additional coursework elsewhere. I'm a registered land surveyor in 7 states, registered professional engineer in 3 states, and I am a certified photogrammetrist.
There we go. Senator Kolb, follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are we talking about? Mostly just to help the public in changes. Are we talking about a millimeter? Are we talking about 10 feet or 100 miles? Could you give some sort of quantification about the change that may happen? Good.
Okay, in one of the writings I presented to you, I think it was on Monday, There's a table of what is the geodetic position of a little feature on top of this building called Capitol Dome. It has four national determinations, and they range in differences of, let me take a look here. I don't have it right here in front of me, but up to 100 and some odd meters, the change in position due to the change of our knowledge of where the Earth's reference frame is at the time that survey was done, or thought this position was. All right. We did not have a good knowledge in 1910. That's the first one. And Ms. Rogers did not talk about that because that's sort of in the, should I say, the fog clouds of our existence of knowledge. NAD 27 was really the first, it was the second major national definition. And then the next one was 1983, 86, which is 83, we had to adopt that name, and I'm the guy that caused that problem. But we didn't complete it till 86. And in 96, we redid the 86 adjustment here to feather in new data and information we had. We moved it, maybe a half a meter from 27 to 83, 86. There was a shift east-west in longitude of approximately 90 meters in numerical value. Now, if you go out at lunchtime, walk around the building, you won't find any cracks if the building moved 90 meters, all right? Or moved north 3 meters or south 3 meters. It's just how we do what we had at that instant in time. So there will be no, I can't quantify these at each one of these. However, when these reference systems are in place, we will know their relationship to each other mathematically and physically. So that if one property is in, let's say, 2022, and the other property is at NAD 83, 86, we will know how we'd have to take the set of information there and mathematically migrate it to the other one, or vice versa, so that we can find out what is physically in error. And I have not done this on many real properties, but I have done these on several major engineering works, including the water supply system for Chicago.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm speaking specifically of the volume of said area. So you got an acre, and the acre volume, it moves northwest. I don't think that's, so what? I mean, as long as it's relatively the same volume of 1 acre. My question is the 1 acre change? That's the question I was asking. Thank you.
The acreage of the parcel in any entity will be the same within the ability to relate mathematically one to the other. From this time on, I expect that to be like 99% or better. From before, we had our geodetic data was not as homogeneous because of the nature of the technology available. All right, we got the real kick on change in the very early 70s when we started GPS. Okay, and matter of fact, it only got reflected in 5 sets of observations in North America when we did the 86 adjustment. Right now, we've probably got 30 or 40 million observations that we can correlate and get all the pictures together very accurately.
Committee, anything further? Yes, Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you visited at all with the counties, county assessors, et cetera? Because this seems like it could be a huge burden on them going through this change. So I'm wondering if you've received any input from them.
Mr.
Chairman,
Yep, let's go ahead and go with Ms. Rogers. Ms. Rogers.
Thank you. Chairman Brown, Senator Furphy. So I have visited with Ken Giel when he was with Laramie County, and he was chairman of the Wyoming Association of County Assessors, and he was willing at the time to write a letter in support of this when he was serving in that role. Now he has gone to Department of Revenue, so he is no longer in that role. But my understanding, again, documents are filed at courthouses now. that workflow is already in place and county clerks receive those documents and file them appropriately. This is no different. It's just again, it's a different checkbox on those documents, different wording for what datum they're using. There is no additional impact to counties as a result of this.
Let's go to Director Sheehan. Director, if you can bring us up to speed quickly on what this means for the Department of ETS, Enterprise Technology Services, and where this interloops with you. Appreciate you being here.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, and members of the committee, I am Interim Director and State CIO T.R. Sheehan. Mr. Chairman, to answer your question, I think from a state agency perspective, the proposed statute changes here are, minimal. I think the language is appropriate to use, that we're going to use the current version rather than specifying a version, so we're not pigeonholed in a particular standard. Some of the language in here that, especially on page 8, lines 7 through 18, I think is pretty important, that we're not required to update, or agencies or professionals are not required to use a different datum, or they can use a different datum or a geodetic reference. So from a state side, I think it's minimal. I've talked with many of my peers. They don't seem to be too concerned because of some of that language that is in this proposed bill. In conversation I've had, Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, it's my understanding, and I'll defer to the two individuals next to me if I have this incorrect, but it's possible, that corner pin could change. And that's just because we have more reliable data. And it's possible a fence line today under the old standard could be different under the new standard. And that is something that should be considered. I don't think it's a reason not to move forward, right? It puts us in a position to have more accurate data so we know exactly where those lines should be. But it could have the potential to cause some differences, I think, of opinion of neighbors with this more accurate data. But I don't think it's a reason not to move forward.
You have a question? Yeah, Co-Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to understand what the, what the facts are. So I thought we just heard that, it's not necessarily going to lead to any changes in property lines. Certainly, I don't, you think you heard about something like that in terms of actual use of the land. And as a rancher, obviously that's something that's a huge deal. But, you can go into a pasture and see that, those old markers, the little silver plated, they're about this big, that would, say where the section line was or whatever. And it's my understanding that if you've been using a fence line for 100 years, this isn't going to change anything. And so I just want to make that absolutely clear. That so I have to ask the question again, because I think if we're getting two different answers, so we need to be clear here. And so I appreciate what I heard from the two folks on the right, but Mr. Sheehan, I want to make sure that we all have the same understanding of the facts here.
Yeah, I certainly have a way of explaining it, but I'm going to let Ms. Rogers bring it forward. And then if Dr. Stoughton has some anything to add to it, that would be fine.
Chairman Brown, thank you. So to Co-Chair Boner's point, section corner markers that are on the ground, those are fact. It's the coordinates that we assign to them, the arbitrary coordinates that are assigned to them that change. And so that is what we're talking about, is improving how those coordinates are derived and assigned. Fence lines that have been there for 100 years, unless somebody's really wants a piss and match, they're going to stay there. But like Director Sheehan said, is it not in everyone's best interest to have your parcels mapped as accurately as possible? So, there is a difference between, I see this impacting new subdivisions more than people going back and saying, hey, let's revisit this fence line that's been here for 100 years. That's my personal interpretation. So it is much more impactful for new subdivisions, new property delineations, and again, property disputes or any trespass on public lands.
Yep, and I think that's exactly how I was going to put it, is what is currently here is here to stay. We're not changing that. The numbers may change, and more accurately reflect where we actually see it via geospatial data. And that's really what we're trying to do, is make sure that we're updating from 1983. Let's be clear here, this is older than I am, the standard, that we're updating from that standard to today's standards. Well, I guess last year's standard, is that right?
Chairman Brown, it's titled SPSC 2022, but it will not actually be released until 2025. So you
Of
know the
course,
speed
we'll
of
make this
government.
way more difficult than it
Right.
has to be. So that's, yes, Dr. Stun.
First, a little aside, this is the way the government does business, okay?
Yeah.
Every one of these changes that have occurred all the way back to 1910 have had these time lapses in them, all right? Like the 27, they said it was then. Actually, they did not complete all the calculations because we didn't have computers until World War II. So it can take time. Now it's much easier. The other important aspect of this, which Ms. Rogers didn't talk about, it improves our geographic location, hopefully, well, absolutely, of all new design constructed infrastructure. And in the process, it gives us the opportunity that we encounter old infrastructures, either abandoned or just there, and we don't know about them. We can get them into the system and integrate them there. I saw a job in California in 1976 where they didn't know gas line pipeline had been abandoned. And the next time the bulldozer driver drove over it, he went 40 feet in the air. Fortunately, he was not killed, but we did not have any knowledge of these kinds of things happen. And that's, in my opinion, the infrastructure for the data that quote I generate or design is the most important thing. However, the other work is just as important, but I am looking at the safety and health of the general public.
Okay. Yes, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My home was built in 1910. And out back, they built the carriage house. Don't know exactly when that was built. And they didn't have setbacks. So I live in town, neighbors are there. When you look at the current GIS map, my garage sits about 8 inches into the alley and about 1.5 feet onto my neighbor's property. If yours comes along and exacerbates that situation, are we looking at the necessity of creating other legislation down the road that does what Senator Kolb was talking about, that maintains, am I going to lose ground? You know, as long as the garage is there, it's fine, but I would like to add on to it, make it big enough to be useful, and I can't touch it because where it is. I guess my question is, are we introducing ourselves into a rat's nest of other legislation to try to resolve some of these older neighborhoods? You had mentioned this is primarily for new neighborhoods, but I'm a little leery from that regard, that respect, if you could help out.
Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and take a stab at this, and then Senator Kolb actually has the answer as well. Keep in mind that we're not changing anything that's on a map right now. The location of Wyoming's boundaries are not going to change. What we're talking about is, if you go look at Dr. Stoughton's information to us, is the numbers on your GPS, right? Your minutes, your latitude, your longitude, those digits are going to be more precise with the 2022 datum. It's not changing where the outline is at. It's not changing where your property line's at. It's not going to change any setbacks. It's not going to do any of that. All we're doing is adopting the new datum. So when YDOT or the military department or whomever utilizes the information that we have at a state level, it is now recognized as this was recorded underneath the 2023 datum as opposed to the 1983 datum. And all it's doing is referencing, going back to saying, this was recorded using these standards and methodologies, and this information was pulled back from here. It's not changing any property lines. It's not changing anything along those areas. So, yep. Representative Smith.
Thank you for the explanation. My quick question is, what kind of impact would this have on the private sector? So other engineers or surveyors, would they need more training? Would they need software upgrades, things like that?
Dr. Stoughton?
We've been working on, I have for almost 60 years worked on documentation of how to properly use these systems. And much of the literature that the older surveyors saw was written in another generation of technology and understanding of how to do things. In 1927, if a surveyor, an average surveyor that you hired downtown, if he did a survey, 1 part in 10,000, that was the gold ticket. The Coastal Geodetic Survey, the predecessor of GS, if they did a geodetic survey from which this would be extended, 1 in 50,000 was what they were looking for, a national across the country. Well, in about 1960, the National Geodetic Survey started looking at this, and they figured that the uncertainty of the distance from San Francisco to New York City was about 120 meters. Now, that may not be very much in 3,000 miles to you, but in surveying, that is one big number. That's when their technology started changing and producing these higher accuracies. Also, after the Korean War in about 1970, the private sector started picking up on the modern technology. And instead of getting a survey at 1 in 20,000, they were going around and doing a ranch of 10,000 acres with a 1 part in 40,000, 1 part in 100,000 precision accuracies, which they didn't know what to do with. Now, in 1983, when we started the National Geodetic Data turnaround, I was with the national government on geodetic surveys all over the world. We were able to position points independent of each other all the way across the world, less than 10 meters. And now we know the uncertainty of where the center of the Earth is less than 2.5 meters. Now that's out of 6,000 kilometers. That's pretty good work. All right. This technology has changed so fast that people haven't philosophically caught up with it. All right. And understood it. We're trying to do that. And we're not asking for the average surveyor to go out and do 1 part per million surveys. We're asking them to go out that if they're going to set a point for a legal purpose, and only for a legal purpose, not for a
Dr. Stoughton, can I have you pull yourself forward to the
and
mic?
not for a
Thank you.
construction purpose, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We're asking them 1 part in 100,000 for that point itself. Now, it's not the boundary marker itself, but it's the point that controls that boundary marker. So if the surveyor goes out with his usual casual equipment and he does a 1 part in 20,000 survey from that control marker to there, he has to be with a certain minimum distance and demonstrate that he has used appropriate technical processes. And the question also comes up as who oversees these qualities? That is the state registration law, because we, as members of the board, and I was a member of the New York board for 6 years, we went and reviewed the candidates or the licensees for their minimum qualifications to practice within the scope that they were working. And if they did not have that experience, but had the other, if they practiced outside the scope they were learning, they had 2 points of recourse. One is the board could suspend or terminate the license. And the second one was the people go to the common court and sue for financial remuneration. All right. Now, we're still in the material that's presented here, have not caught up with the 21st century technology. In 1993, I took a team to Paraguay to map the entire country with GPS. We had 6 satellites, that's all we had. We had to do it 4 hours a day, 60% of them 2 days. That's 1991. By the turn of the century, we could get the same amount of data in less than 5 minutes. And right now, I've developed technology and they're beta testing it right now where we can do some of these surveys, not necessarily what we're doing here, but some very close to it within 30 seconds. All right. That's how fast this technology's changed, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Okay.
And personally, when I wrote the bill in 83, I followed the 27 legislation, we were using their technology. In this bill, I started working on this in 2016. The technology's just gone past me so fast I can't catch it. And Ms. Rogers could say the same thing in her applications to GPS.
Okay.
Chairman Brown, could I add?
Yes.
And Representative Smith, so there is the Board of Professional Licensed Surveyors and Engineers. And I would think that they would send out communication to their members to advise them of the change and, you know, that they need to use the new datum when it comes time. It is incumbent upon the professional communities to do that education and outreach so that people know that this is the thing and this is what you should be using. This is the new standard. So there is that impact as far as education and outreach. But again, they're checking a box now. They're just checking a different box, and impacts to the professional communities from having differences would be greater, you know, when those plans misalign in the middle of a construction site.
Okay, briefly, and then we're going to wrap this up just because we are really getting deep in the weeds, and I understand where we're at. Hold on just a second. Senator, I've got Representative Stivar, and then I'll come back over here to you.
Thank
Representative
you,
Stivar?
Chairman Brown. It was mentioned a pipeline. How is this going to affect 811? Call before you dig.
I'm not familiar with that because I don't work in the area, but could you explain it just quickly? I think I have the correct answer.
I can
for you.
answer it for you. It's not going to affect anything. The information of where stuff is at is going to be there. The update, so when somebody goes to look at 811 and they say, hey, look, we're going to go dig in this. Right now, they're going off of the NAD 83 system. And they're going to be utilizing those coordinates. When they start laying the new ones, they're going to be off of the 2023 coordinates. There's going to be mathematical differences between the 1983 and the 2023 information. It's going to be directly off of when somebody comes in and does this. Also with 811, they come out and actually mark and scan for those areas in relation to where they're actually digging. And they have their set paths. This is not going to affect anything that's in the ground and where it's at. It's not going to change. If it was here today, it's not going to be 3 feet off tomorrow. We're not changing anything along those lines. So, Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd point the committee towards page 8 of this draft bill, line 7. And it clearly states the provisions of this chapter shall not be construed to, and it goes on to say, Romanet I, prohibit the appropriate use of other datums, et cetera. Then Romanet 2, require the revision of any survey, deed, record, or other document prepared, recorded before July 1 of 2024, which probably maybe should be changed to whenever it's actually going to be, which would be like 2025, we heard. But the point is, this is about a geospatial block, right? Your property lines. And it may move along this big map of the world, but it's still the same block. Just a way of referencing where the block is. Maybe a simpler way of saying it is I have understood it.
And I do appreciate, I certainly appreciate the depth and the knowledge of all three of you sitting here on the other side of the dais. This is the problem that you get with the citizen legislature, right? We have everybody from a retired cop to somebody who asks money for a living and a rancher. We've all got different backgrounds, and this gets very, very concerning when we start thinking about how this could impact our constituents. So what I'd like to do is bring this back to the dais, and I want to make sure that we have the questions that are answered. If anybody has any questions that are not incredibly in-depth, I'm certainly okay with making sure that we get the questions answered, but I also want to make sure that we're not going into how is this going to affect this. We're not going to affect where things are laying out in the ground, where your property lines are going to be at, or anything like that. We're just having a more accurate representation of where that information is going to be mapped. That's it. And going back to as Senator Kolb just mentioned, if something was already previously mapped, we can still utilize that information based off of the last page here on page 8, which will end up being the last page of the bill most likely. So Committee, any further questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Laverne?
I read most of your letter, and I think the last 3 pages said, this is what I would do to this bill. Are you happy with the way this bill is written? Thank you.
We've got to make a clarification.
Dr.
Last
Stoughton, please,
time I-
please play the microphone
The
closer.
last time, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the last time I saw this draft bill, it was numbered 107. That was last Thursday. I just put it up around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I got bombed Monday afternoon or
Tuesday
evening,
evening.
Tuesday. And I'm on my way to a 12-hour procedure and trip at a hospital for surgery. And I've got to get this whole thing changed. There are some minor things that I would modify to that. They would not legally affect anything except that they would be statutorily sealing, what I call sealing. The first one of these ever done where you had to cross over with two generations, I did for the state of Georgia in 1973. And then nobody had thought about it at the time, is how do you marry an existing system that has to go for perpetuity because of its creation? In that element can be used legally. Or go to the new one, and when do you do the crossover if you have to? Or can you have permissibly both sit side by side? Georgia agreed with me they could sit side by side if, and I have no reason to believe they did not, both sections of the law were correctly documented. They can live right next to each other because we have in place the physical mathematics or the computational mathematics that we need to correlate between the two. Let me give you an example.
Dr. Stoughton, what I'd like to do.
This is my little buddy.
Dr. Stoughton.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is, I appreciate the in-depth information that you're going to have on this. What I think we might want to do is that if we have concerns with the language as written that is outside of what we're comfortable with, I think it's probably appropriate to work with Dr. Stoughton or Ms. Rogers if we choose to move this bill forward. That's committee's prerogative as well. Recognizing that there may be small amendments to be made, we can certainly make them on the fly today. And I would say let's utilize Dr. Stoughton and Ms. Rogers and Mr. Sheehan. If they have recommended language to use today, we can go through that when we work the bill. We'll have them sit here and work the bill with us. Otherwise, we can pass it as is and we can work with them afterwards and get the correct information, the correct language, and we can work about, before we go into session, we can work on fine detailing the language as needed. What I don't want to do is go down a path for the next 45 minutes of I would change this and here's why. I think it's very important. We're on, a tight time schedule today, and I want to make sure that we get moving on this. So, Dr. Stoughton, I apologize for cutting you off, and I do appreciate your vast experience, but we really have to make sure that we're moving on today's committee. So,
Chairman Brown, if I could
Yes.
just add quickly, the subject matter experts that I have visited with are by and large very happy and pleased with the draft bill as it stands. We do have a few minor edits to suggest, so I
and
think
if you
working
have
on
those
yeah.
today,
We can work on it in the future.
okay.
Yeah.
Senator Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did have a question about when the survey will be available, because here it states July 1st of 2024. My question, Mr. Chairman, my question is, when do you think is a reasonable time to state that this survey, this new survey that we heard it was 25, is going to be done? What is your opinion about the date that would be a good date to use from that point forward to use this new survey information?
Chairman Brown,
Yes,
Senator Cole.
please.
So because of how it is future-proof, it's fine to have July 1st of 2024 in there. Because we're saying whatever is the blessed datum that NGS has, we will use. So if it's NAD 83 for another 6 months, when it's released in January 2025, then we just roll over to that. So it's fine as it is.
Sure. Dr. Stoughton?
Mr. Chairman, if I may add just a little bit based upon my experience. They are the shot for 82, then 84, now 85. To make this understood, this particular subject area is part of probably 100 different geophysical scientific programs that are interrelated. All right. They are, as last I see, we get flyers probably once a week, maybe once a month, of we're beta testing this particular phase, which it doesn't affect us, but affects putting the entire software package together on the job. What will happen is when they conclude, the administrators and the staff in Washington conclude that this is in the best possible form at the time, they will officially announce, predated in the Federal Register, a whole blurb, it'll probably take 1/2 to 1 pages about implementing this system. And they will say something somewhere in there. This system won't take place on 10 o'clock, July the 18th, 2027. They will say it will take place at 0 hours, 1 January 2027. It will be, I will almost guarantee it 99.99%, I'll do better than Ivory Soap, that it will be on that date of a particular year. And there will be no doubt about it, and I expect it will probably be at least a 3 to a 6 month lead time.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any further questions for the 3 witnesses right now? Seeing none, okay. I'm going to keep you guys there. I don't want to have you guys disappear because then I'm just going to have you turn around and work the bill with us if we go down that far. Do we have any further public testimony? Anything online? Okay, seeing no further public testimony is closed. Committee, I'm going to bring the bill back up to the dais. And what is the pleasure of the committee?
I'll move the bill.
Okay, I have it moved by Berger, seconded by O'Hearn. Okay, bill has been moved and seconded. Committee, let's work the bill page by page. Ms. Rogers, Dr. Stoughton, if you guys have specific language that you guys would like to see changed and you have recommendations, I'm going to ask you guys to work this bill with us. Committee, that does not mean that we can just skip the process of you guys will need to move the recommendation. And then if you guys actually have the language written down or something like that, I will ask you to work with our LSO staff if anything is adopted to make sure that we have exact language, okay? So committee, let's go and start with page 1. And then Ms. Rogers, Dr. Stoughton, as we're going through this, please just interrupt me and let me know if you guys have some recommendations. Page 1. Going into page 2, we have definitions. Going into page 3, we have section 2, where we are starting to amend 3425-101. Any changes on 101? Okay, going down to 3425-102. On to page 4.
Chairman Brown.
Ms.
it-
Rogers?
Thank you. It was recommended in section 102, removing the section that says, and the metadata of the observations used to determine the coordinates. The reason being that those potentially affects all coordinates, even those used for GIS, DEMs, and topographic surveys and non-boundary survey applications. But it should remain in section 103. So I'm trying to find exactly what line
I
it's in.
think that's on lines
Oh yeah,
1
the
and 2.
red that's right there
Yep.
at the top of 4.
Okay, committee, so it's recommended from those who know a heck of a lot more than at least I do on this, on lines 1 and 2 of page 4, to delete and the metadata of the observations used to determine the coordinates. So a period would be then inserted of a meter. Is that correct? That would be the end of the sentence. Okay, it's been moved by Representative O'Hearn, seconded by Berger. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, that's adopted. On through, continuing through 102. Anything further on 102 on page 4? Moving on to page 5. Page 5. 3425-103. Seeing nothing there. 3425-105.
Oh, hang on.
and you'll see the permissive language on this committee. I think that's also very important to recognize that we're looking at may be presented and recorded in public land. Again, this is that permissive language that allows whatever datum that they're using is to be used, the correct datum to be used. So going down to the strikeout language on page 6 and the new information on 105, any information there?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
would that include the metadata on line 14 on page 6 and line 15 from the professionals out there?
That should be retained.
That should be.
That should be
It
retained.
should be retained.
Thank you.
Okay.
Otherwise, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, otherwise you don't have, whether it was done in 19, other than the date, because these change, some of these change daily. Also, we have several systems available for them to collect metadata from, not just Opus.
Yes, Senator or Co-Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we didn't go over the protocol of these meetings, but I think it's important, especially when we're working on a bill, that we wait till we're recognized by the chair, and we'll have a specific question. I know we're trying to work with
I
everybody, but
apologize.
let's stay focused, and that's the way these meetings work. You get recognized by the chair, you don't speak until then, and that goes for everybody.
Okay, 3425-106, Ms. Rogers?
Sorry,
That's
Chairman
okay.
Brown, I'm a little late. So in the heading of section 105, it says recording coordinates, semicolon, use of satellite survey techniques. It's recommended to strike the use of satellite survey techniques from the heading, excuse me, because it's not actually referenced anywhere in the rest of the text of that section using satellite survey techniques.
Okay, let's take a look at
So that's
that.
line 15 on page 5.
I do not see any subparagraphs.
It's the heading.
Yep,
Sorry.
I see what you're talking about. I'm just reading through the rest of the language to make sure. It is interesting. I don't have statute. So one of the things that is, we're very cautious on is, as we're doing this, the information that we're looking at in a bill is only what is being changed. We're not actually referencing that entire section. I don't see any subsections on here, so subsection A, but LSO, do we have anything further on this, or is 105 just that section?
Mr. Chairman, 105 is just that section, and that's a change that LSO can just
Just
make.
amend?
Yeah, you
Okay.
don't have to make a motion on this.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Stoughton, please.
I'd like to point out, Mr. Chairman, when you're talking about satellite techniques, there is other technology available, has been available for 30, 40, 50 years, that will achieve the same results, and they should not be removed from the ability to do that, because probably 50% of the surveyors don't have GPS equipment
Okay,
or up to date.
appreciate
And they
that.
would have to do other things, but the metadata that is produced in any survey system there, if it is written correctly, will describe the processes were done and the algorithms that were used to solve it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and work this down. 3425-106. Reference to system on maps. Looks like that is just very simple conforming language here. So let's go to 3425-107. Again, more conforming language. 3425-108 is where we have new language, and I think this is kind of the language that should be recognized as the catch-all. Any further amendments on page 8? Yes, Senator Culp.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm still concerned that on page 8, line 14 through 18, that require the revision of any survey deed, the language is problematic. It looks to me, I mean, it's going to be, that's what I wanted to bring up. It looks like when you start claiming a date and you word it in the way it's worded, it doesn't, it reads like it could be an issue.
Okay, do you have a motion to?
Well, I think we should either revise it or have the LSO come up with better language possibly right now, or strike it. I don't know if we need it. I don't know what the necessity is for this. It just seems like we word it in a certain way that put us in a corner. that I'm concerned that it won't be available July 1 of 2024.
So I think an easy way to do this would be just to strike prepared or recorded before July 1st, 2024. And you could just say, or other document prepared that uses the Wyoming Coordinate System, NAD 1983. So that way we just get rid of the date. Yes, Talise?
Mr. Chairman, the July 1, 2024 was added in because of the effective date of the bill. So that is why that is there, just saying when this is effective, July 1,
That actually makes
2024.
sense.
It's saying that we're gonna use the most recent version, but anything that was used before this effective bill was enacted is fine.
Okay. Yeah, but-
So I think that language should remain in there.
Okay. Senator, so I see both sides of the argument here, but I think LSO has this right as far as the legal side of things, that if it's recorded prior to the effective date of the bill, that's why we have that language in there. If it's required anything different than that, then after that, that's why the date is in here. I understand where you're coming from. It looks goofy, it feels goofy, but I think that having that in there provides the information, understanding that regardless of what system, what datum they're utilizing, it's anything that was recorded before July 1st, 2024 that uses this. We don't have to go back and revise anything. Do you have a different thought?
I don't know that it's necessary. The bill has an effective date on it. So why do we have to put it here as some sort of confusing language? That was my concern.
I
And
can see
if it's
that.
not a concern of everyone, that's all right. I just wanted to bring it up as when I'm reading it, it looks difficult to understand and very confusing. That was my concern, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Committee, do you want to make that as a motion and test the waters?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Sounds like the waters aren't.
All right.
It'd be wet.
Let's, so we also have the repealers of 3425-101B and 3425-104 in section 3. Staff has provided those for us in the staff comment. That will not remain in the new bill, just so everyone's aware that information will not be provided. This will be cleaned up, so you will not have pages 9 and 10 and 11. My guess is that we will probably be able to combine this into 8 pages. So any further amendments on the fly, Ms. Rogers or Dr. Stoughton?
I do have a comment looking at one of the other documents, and I can't find it in these because as I said, 04 was from last July when I got, that's the only version I've ever seen. In there, the specified precisions of the coordinates to 0.01 meter and 0.01 feet. My recommendation has been in the other documents, let the coordinates only be in feet because nobody's going to use meters first. The second is 0.1 meter and 0.1 feet is not a comparative linear unit. They're one order of magnitude or 10 difference approximately. So you must be consistent on your linear units on stating the precision of the coordinates. And my recommendation is 1/100 of a foot, period. If you want the equivalent in metric, it's got to be down to the millimeters because they roll themselves into 1/100 of a foot. If you understand what I'm saying, Mr.
I see
Chairman.
where we're at, Dr. Stott, but I do not see that in this bill. And I do believe that was, we asked LSO to draft based upon a previous bill draft from the year prior. And then we also morphed it as the bill draft was coming along to make sure that it was more appropriate for what we were trying to actually accomplish. So I do believe the information that you're talking about was in I believe that was in the one that joint, I don't remember which committee it was, but
Yep.
that's the one that they were looking at, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Last year's bill said that the measurements would be expressed in meters. This bill on the bottom of page 3, beginning with line 23, requires those distances to be expressed in feet and decimals of feet.
Mr.
Yes,
And
Dr. Stott.
the other reason it's required is we have a federal register issue of somewhere around 1927. I have a copy somewhere in all my papers, and I referred to it in my last communication, that it will be in feet. Discussion.
Okay.
And the
Right.
second thing about the stability and how long this has been around, there is the handbook to run this map projection published in 1997, complete with every detail. So this hadn't been around just a couple of weeks.
Okay. Were you good there with that, Ms. Rogers?
Yes, Chairman.
Dr. Sheehan, or Dr. Sheehan, we just upgraded you, Mr. Sheehan.
I hope that comes with the pay raise, Mr. Chairman. No, I am, at this time, no further comment.
Doctor. All right, committee. Question being called. LSO, can we get a roll call on 24 LSO 247 as amended?
Senator Brennan. Aye. Senator Furphy. Aye. Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Senator Pappas. Aye. Representative Berger.
Aye.
Representative Nemec.
Aye.
Representative Obermuller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft.
Aye.
Representative Smith.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
Aye.
Representative Wiley.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Boner.
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
14 ayes.
Okay. Committee, thank you so much for your work on this one. Everybody at the other side of the dais, I appreciate you guys helping us out through this. Like I said, you guys' brains are just crawling with information that unfortunately I don't know that we just have the time to grasp on everything that we just did, but I do appreciate you guys bringing this forward and helping us get through this. So,
Thank you.
all right, that moves us right into our next agenda item. That puts us 3 minutes behind schedule, so not too bad. Cowboy Challenge Program, and this has us at 24 LSO 81. Is this you again, Talise? Okay. Talise, if I can have you go ahead, and then if you guys would like to join us up at the table as soon as Dr. Stoughton's down, you guys are more than welcome to join us. Talise, if you'd walk us through the bill, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, LSO. I'm presenting Bill Draft 24 LSO 81 on Youth Challenge Program revisions. This bill draft was continued from the August meeting with a few amendments that I'll highlight. To go through the bill draft, page 2 amends Wyoming Statute 197207 governing the Wyoming National Guard Youth Challenge Program Endowment Account. The added language allows the funds in the account to be distributed for paying costs associated with agreements, contracts, or memorandum of understanding with other states for Wyoming youth to attend National Guard Youth Challenge programs in other states. Page 3 amends Wyoming Statute 199701, which establishes the National Guard Youth Challenge Program. Subsection B is amended to add that the Wyoming Military Department may enter into agreements, contracts, or memorandum of understanding with National Guard Youth Challenge programs in other states to send Wyoming youth to those programs and to facilitate the acceptance or transfer of all academic credits received from completion of or participation in a National Guard Youth Challenge program in another state to a Wyoming public school within a school district. Page 4 amends subsection C to state that the Wyoming Military Department may promulgate rules that includes standards for sending Wyoming youth to National Guard Youth Challenge programs in other states. Provisions for ensuring academic credits earned by the youth shall be successfully accepted or transferred to a Wyoming public school within a school district, and if necessary, to address the state's liability for sending Wyoming youth to programs in other states. Page 4 adds a new subsection D, which authorizes the Wyoming Military Department to enter into agreements, contracts, and memorandum of understanding with other states. Subsection D also states that a youth recruited by the department and sent to a program in another state may receive a high school diploma, high school equivalency certificate, or academic credit for high school graduation requirements. Subsection D also provides that the Wyoming school district the youth is enrolled in following completion of or participation in a program in another state shall accept and apply the academic credit received to the total number of credits required for graduation from a public school within the school district. Page 5 amends Wyoming Statute 199702, which governs funding. Subsection B is included on page 6. Subsection B provides that the Wyoming Military Department may expend funds appropriated by the state to recruit Wyoming youth and enter into agreements, contracts, or memorandum of understanding with other states to send Wyoming youth to programs in other states. Subsection B provides that the department is authorized to expend state funds for the state share of the cost of tuition for each youth for transportation of each youth from Wyoming to a program in another state and other related costs. The bill draft also creates a new subsection C, which was the language originally at the end of subsection A, and states that the funds appropriated are continuously appropriated and shall not lapse or revert until the program is terminated as provided by Wyoming Statute 199704. The bottom of page 6 and 7 amends Wyoming Statute 199703 regarding reporting. Subsection A is amended to provide that the department shall include in a report within a biennial budget request yearly enrollment in the National Guard Youth Challenge Program operated in Wyoming and yearly enrollment in National Guard Youth Challenge programs in other states with enrolled Wyoming youth, the number of youth remaining after the first 2 weeks of the program in Wyoming or another state, and the yearly number of youth successfully completing the challenge program in Wyoming or another state with a detailed list of successful completions by state. The bottom of page 7 amends 199704, which provides a sunset date for the National Guard Youth Challenge Program. The statute is amended to extend the sunset date from 2025 to 2029, and this was one of the amendments made at the August meeting. Page 8 amends Wyoming Statute 213110 governing the duties of the Board of Trustees in each school district. The amended statute states that the Board of Trustees of each school district shall accept a student's academic credits received from completion or participation in a National Guard Youth Challenge program in another state and apply the academic credits received in the program to the total number of credits required for graduation. Section 2 is on pages 9 and 10. Subsection A states the military department is authorized 6 full-time positions for the purposes of the act. Subsection B was amended at the August meeting. It provides an appropriation of $2,363,523 from the School Foundation Program account for purposes of funding the positions authorized in subsection A and to implement Section 1 of this act in the National Youth Challenge Program. Section 3 provides an effective date of July 1, 2024, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Appreciate that. Committee, any questions for Ms. Hanson on the draft bill before you? Yes, Representative Stibar.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. Page 6, line 14, or line 16, will not lapse or revert. So out of that $2,363,523, if they only take 40 students, none of the other money will go back to the state, will stay in that account? Is that the way I'm reading that?
Mr.
or
Fuller
understanding that?
or Ms. Hanson?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, I think just the addition of the word revert, I think is just more of a technical change. The key language is until the program is terminated. And so that means those funds would remain in that account pending further legislative action until, and then you look on page 7, June 30, 2029.
Representative Stivar, does that answer your question?
Yes, Chairman, but I'll bring it up later. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Co-Chairman?
And so to be clear, that's the status quo. That's what this program has operated for a while now. It's not to say we'd never recapture funds from that, but it wouldn't happen automatically. That'd have to be a decision of legislatures to remove any excess funds. Is that correct?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Boner, the only thing that's really changing that's changing with the reversion of funds is the date, because the committee has amended the sunset date. So I think, Mr. Chairman, the answer to your question is yes.
Okay. Yes. Colonel Smith, if you would please introduce yourself first, and then if you want to go ahead and answer that as well.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm Chris Smith, the Director of the Commander's Action Group for the Wyoming Military Department. My understanding when we stood up the program, the reason for this language was the classes typically run in January and July. At the end of the biennium, if the language, it could create a mess in trying to set up the July class because it was entering into a new biennial year. So that was one of the reasons the money didn't lapse.
I actually remember us having this discussion in 2017 as well. I think it was, I think Brian actually hit it on the head, that this is just cleaning it up to make sure that it was status quo, but also the fact that instead of being in a position where they can't pay the bills and they're waiting for that new budget to come through, that money sits there, and if they need additional money, they can request additional money, but if they don't need any, it just sits there. So it's kind of instead of having a reversion and coming back and saying, okay, well, we need $2 million. If they've got 1.9, they're not going to ask for another $2 million. So, committee, any further questions for LSO? Senator Kolb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we know how much money is currently in this account we just were talking about? Do we have a number? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I am not sure the current number, but we can look into it for you.
I can tell you it is out in the data book. I just looked at that, but Colonel Smith, do you have that by chance?
Mr. Chairman, in regard to Senator Kolb's question, if I'm reading our budget statement correct, I believe we have a little over $2 million in the account still. And that, as part of our budget submission to the governor's office, is taken out, is reverted or removed from the budget as part of a budget request.
And I believe because of the language that we have in there as well, that will or potentially would revert, because we don't have the language in there that it shall not revert. It just says that it shall not lapse. So I do believe that as it currently stands, that money would actually revert back at the end of the biennium if it's not spent. So the $2 million that they're requesting here is basically just to supplement the current $2 million that's in there. Okay. Any further questions for LSO? Okay. Retired Colonel Smith, my apologies there. We'll go ahead and have you go over your portion of the bill if you wouldn't mind. Your thoughts, your.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So essentially, you know, as we talked about the last time the committee met, we really are pulling back all the money from the residential program and then reestablishing money for this referral program under this bill. As the committee is aware in our previous testimony, we currently are referring people out. We did that in September of 22, and we've continued because of the uncertainty of the referral program and whether or not it was going to continue past into the end of this biennial year. We only currently have 2 Wyoming cadets in the Nevada program. Previously, the previous class, we had 20. It illustrates one of the needs we have to keep this program, especially as a referral program, in the public and educators' minds. And it was one of the reasons why this bill requests 6 positions, which includes 3 recruiters to be located in 3 of the 4 quadrants of the state, so to speak. What we found is if you're just going to rely on parents of cadets or high school students who are in trouble of dropping or in risk of dropping out to call the Cowboy Challenge program and say, hey, can my son or daughter participate in this referral program? The face-to-face of a recruiter in the local area with both the high school counselors or graduation coaches and with the parents, I think is critical if you want a referral program to work. As this committee will recall, the referral program is our attempt to continue to meet the needs of at-risk youth in our communities while we establish where and I guess really if we can reestablish an in-residence program to reset up this as an in-residence program within the state. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for the committee's questions.
Representative Stiver?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the 6 individuals, how many Army and Air Guard recruiters we have throughout the state? And they should be already working with the student counselors in them, and they should know the at-risk students. Would that lower the amount if you put that work, some of that work on them?
General, if you'll please introduce
Mr.
yourself
Chairman,
first. Yeah.
Major General Greg Porter, I'm the Adjutant General for the state of Wyoming. Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, we have about 20 recruiters on the Army side and about 8 on the air side. Our at-risk youth population is not one typically they go after, just because of the entrance requirements to get in. So they are paid on the federal status to recruit men and women to the Army and the Air Guard, not so much to this one. Now, my guidance has been, if you run across a student that could be potentially a good cadet, try to link those up. But that's not their primary focus.
Follow up?
Thank you, Chairman. Most of the kids that have graduated from Wyoming's Challenge have went into the military.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
No, sir, I wouldn't say so. We probably have, depending on the class, between 11 and 15% probably join the military. And actually, we try to encourage them to go to the active component when that happens, because many of those cadets are just coming from a bad place at home. So when we talk to them, we do want them to get to a good spot. So we actually encourage them, if there's choice, to go to the active component. Obviously, some folks, if they wanted to be in the Wyoming Guard, we're happy to take them, but not as many as maybe you would think actually go to the military.
Committee? Yes, Representative Berger?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, guys. And I've never seen this. I've experienced this program firsthand in many different ways in my community, and never seen it as a program to recruit for the National Guard. I've seen it as a program for another option. I have some very personal ties to this, and it was the option at the time. What I'm having a hard time with right now is that back then, the recruitment came from counselors, teachers. It was well known out there, and it wasn't necessarily from the recruiters. It was a program that was available, and we could send these children, and we're not saying whether they come from troubled homes or not, just kids just having a hard time. And they weren't recruited, they were advised, here's an option, and they got to choose. But it was an in-state option. It got to be in-state. My concern right now, we said it, we have 2 out of state. We used to have 20 in the program. We don't. And we have, back to what Chairman Bonner said, maybe back in the last meeting, we failed to keep them in state, and we haven't found what we needed to do. And for me right now, and I guess my question is to you, are we seeing a lot more kids wanting to go out state and leaving their families? Are you seeing that? Because I'm not seeing that. And it's hard to support something like that, to send them out of state.
General?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berger, I don't know that I could tell you that we are. Like I said, we're not advertising it very strongly. We've got 2 full-time people right now, and it's mostly been word of mouth. The 2 we got, the 2 we have certainly needed the service, but I couldn't tell you if it's because they would, whether it was in-state or out-state. I don't have the sense of what that was.
Follow up?
Thank you. And in general, you do agree when we were in state that, from my perspective, that the recruiting for it and and the word of mouth out there was really significant. It was pretty good.
General?
Yeah, Chairman Brown, Representative, yes, sir. I think that anytime that you have this in-state program and we're all committed to one another in the state and we're meshed, that's the best of all worlds.
Colonel Smith?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, in answer to Representative Berger, we continue to have dialogue with the Department of Education. In fact, we hold an educational leader rendezvous up at Camp Guernsey every summer. We held it again this summer. One of the comments that came out of that from the educators that came, which are principals, counselors, teachers, members of the Department of Education, was one of the comments was asking, is Cowboy Challenge an option going to still be out there? So I think there is an interest in the educational community to have that option to give to parents and students. The bottom line with this is we haven't done we haven't tried a referral program fully invested with people on the ground, talking to the high school counselors and parents, with the Department of Education, knowing that this is going to last past this biennial year, that it's in place and it's going to work. We haven't tried that. This bill would allow us to do that. Certainly, if this 2-year biennial program doesn't bear fruit, then I would assume this legislature would come up with either a different alternative or decide it's no longer working. But we really haven't tried to advertise we're still up and running with this out-of-state option.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask you to jog my memory a little bit because it seems like we did talk about numbers as far as numbers of students in the past. It seems like we talked about 20, maybe 30 at a time. Looking forward, are there projections as what are the, do you have a guess of the potential number of students in the state?
Mr. Chairman,
Smith.
Representative Pendergrass, when we put together the budget request, we thought we'd have a successful program if we had referrals out of state for 30 Wyoming kids twice a year, so 60 per year, 120 for the biennium. When you look at our last numbers through the July 22 class 46, at that time, we had 66 and 65 Wyoming kids in the program at the start of the program. Some dropped out, we graduated 48 or so. So we had, in each class, we had about 60 for our in-resident program. So our guess is a good referral program would be about half of that, sending them out of state. But like I said, it's our best guess to make a program work.
Okay. Yes, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have a concern about the 6 full-time positions. I'm confused on how you can, could you explain to me how you justify 6 people working full-time for this process? It just seems like a number that I don't get. So could you please say why 6 is an appropriate number and how you can just it up with somebody working 40 hours a work week, you know, all for 50 weeks a year, whatever it may be with your vacations. Could you help me with that? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, yes, sir. Basically, the 6 positions are I call them a director, but it really be like a supervisor, which would take care of the main budget and supervising the other remaining employees. And that's somebody we currently have, for example. Then we would have the educational coordinator, because of the amount of time it takes to work with the schools to both transfer records, get credits back from the out-of-state program. And we have somebody who does that currently, and I think they're gainfully employed. They also answer questions from the home high schools about what is going on for their students out of state, as well as all the credit recovery. We have in the bill that they have to accept the credits, but it's never that easy. So then we have the 3 recruiters. The idea was we looked at the historical draw of students in the program for the last 10 years in the in-residence program. And really we drew cadets from all 4 quadrants of the state. So our idea was we would put a recruiter in the Southwest, the Northwest, and the Northeast, and then our full-time folks would take care of the Southeast. And have them located in those communities and be there. The 6th position was an admin person to take care of the budget niceties and the support of the other people working the paperwork and all that. That is what we came up with for a program. Certainly, if the legislature feels that's too much, the concern that we had, we want to have a fairly robust program to make this work. We don't want to shortchange it in this initial phase until we figure out if it's going to work or not. If it doesn't work, we're going to report to the committee and we're going to tell them the numbers, and the committee can certainly at the biennial year, change the program.
Representative Berger, did you have something? Do you have another question? Okay. Committee, any further questions for the general or for Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative O'Hearn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this still the word just left my mouth. Can I quit anytime I want? We can spend a whole lot of money and I'm there for 2 weeks and I'm really not having as much fun as I thought I would have. And I call my mom and dad and say, come pick me up.
Mr.
I think
Chairman.
the term he was looking for volunteer.
Yes.
Representative O'Hearn, yes, it remains. Cowboy Challenge is an interesting experience. One of the reasons you have 60-something Wyoming cadets in the last class on what we call our day, the initial period, and then we only graduated 48, is we do have people walk away. It doesn't work for some people. They have to want it. Same with the out-of-state program. It's a volunteer. As we've had testimony in past sessions, one of the interesting things about the in-residence program is it's a no-touch program. If people walk off, we call the local law enforcement, and that is a national program procedure. So everywhere we refer Wyoming cadets to, such as Nevada, where our cadets currently are, that is true, they can walk away. And part of what the parent signs an agreement with that host program is that they agree they'll come get their kid if that happens.
Yes, Representative Berger?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. When we send kids to an out-of-state program, whether I believe we have Nevada, Montana, or whatever states, but are we going to look at proximity to how close they are to their community, or are we going to look at can they change their tuition rates too? Is there going to be tuition rates that are going to be, Nevada might be more than Montana or wherever? How are we going to make that determination?
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Berg, great questions. So currently, we only have cadets at Nevada. We've in the past used Idaho, Montana, California. The bill allows us to make an agreement wherever it would work. Our current MOU with Nevada comes to Evanston to pick up the kids. The parents have to transport the kids to Evanston to be picked up to start the program. Every program is different on what they're willing to do. Because of the great distances we have in the West, it's an interesting issue. I'll just give an example. Delaware does not have a program. They have a deal where they refer their students to DC, District of Columbia. They only have 1 or 2 people in Delaware running their program because the DC recruiters come into Delaware to recruit and meet with parents. They're only an hour or 2 away. It's easy. We don't have that. If you're in Newcastle and it's the Nevada program, we can't get Nevada state employees to come all the way to Newcastle to meet with somebody. That is why we're asking for recruiting.
Okay. Committee, any further questions? Yes. Co-chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So appreciate your work on this, gentlemen, and we've come a long way, and I do appreciate all the hard work, certainly just for the community's edification. I mean, right now the statute says, the Wyoming Military Department shall administer this program. And so I think it's important, wherever we come up with here today, that I think we have a responsibility to move a bill forward that, litigates this one way or the other in our branch of government. And I appreciate all the questions that we've had so far. But my question had to do with the federal matching funds. It's my understanding that currently the National Guard Bureau's, their position is that they will not match funds for these state level recruiters. I'm just wondering if you had a chance to dig into that. Is there a federal rule we should be focused on? I think the testimony we heard in Douglas was that there was some sort of congressional prohibition, but I'm just wondering if you were able to track down exactly what the hurdle there was.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman. Yes, sir. When you look at the federal law that established the Youth Challenge Program nationally, it requires an in-residence program for federal funding. They are limited to their 75% federal funding, requiring 25% state match, only for in-residence programs. There's no mechanism currently in federal law for a referral program. Like I said, Delaware's been doing it for several years. There's a couple other states. I want to say New Mexico and Arizona have some deal, but I'd never looked into that. They don't receive any federal money for that.
Well, I think that might be something we may consider if it's in your sense that law passed, they put all these limitations on the program and make it tough for more rural states, more western states to have the program. And I'm just wondering if that may be something that perhaps this committee may advocate for. Apparently with our congressional delegation is allow some mechanism to have cooperative programs between states, especially in sparsely populated rural states. So just a thought there, and something we could do to continue to make this program more viable in our neck of the woods. So thank you, gentlemen.
Committee, anything further? Yes, Representative Pendergraft. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thinking back, it seems like we had this discussion about students that came and decided after a couple of weeks that it wasn't for them, and they, I would use the term maybe flake out of this. We also discussed the possibility of parents having a little skin in the game and having some responsibility. Do you guys have a comment on that? Would that be maybe a rule that would be promulgated as we saw on page 4? How would we handle that? Because I would like to see the parents having the persuasion over the child. Look, you said you wanted to do this. You're going to stick it out.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, parents do have a little skin in the game with the referral program currently. When they sign up for their kid to go to Nevada, they agree to transport their kid to Evanston to meet the Nevada people. So, and they agree if the kid leaves the Nevada program that they'll come get them. So there is that. Beyond that, I'm not sure what else we can do. Part of the reason we've done it that way is when the parent signs their child up for a program like, say, Nevada, they essentially are giving Nevada guardianship of their kid. Got to remember, these are all minors. We didn't want Wyoming State employees to be transporting Wyoming minors anywhere without that kind of an agreement. It becomes very complicated. So we wanted the parents to be the ones to meet with Nevada, because Nevada has a piece of paper that says they can take the kids. The parents obviously have the legal right to take care of their kids. And we just want to put people in between. Kind of a little further than what your question was, but we were very concerned about that, because otherwise we have to get each parent to sign Wyoming documents to transport the kids, and we just really didn't want to be in the child transportation business.
Good. Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. With that, we'll go ahead and open this up. We've got Department of A&I. And then did we have anybody from Idaho or Montana? Did we get anybody online?
Idaho's online.
Okay, so we will go to them directly after A&I. Good morning, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure there's no place you'd rather be on a Thursday morning, right? So if you
Good
please
morning.
introduce yourself for the record and go ahead and go over any information that you guys have on the Youth Challenge program for us.
Great, thank you very much. Chairman, my name is Patricia Bach. I'm the Director of A&I. I'm here with Aaron Williams, who is the Human Resource Division Administrator for A&I as well. The reason we're here today is, I believe last September, this past September, there was some discussion about reclasses and bureaucracy and things like that. So we're here to answer some of your questions regarding the Youth Challenge program. And we did submit a letter under Administrator Williams' signature. I hope everybody has that copy of that. So if you have any questions, we can kind of go through the reclass process if you like. I'm here to give kind of high level, and Aaron's for the weeds. So one thing I wanted to point out is reclasses, and I understand the comment about bureaucracy. So what I wanted to do and say, okay, how many reclasses were asked during the program? How long did it take us to do them? So what we found out, there were 11 reclasses in the database. All of them were approved, and the majority of them were approved in a day and a half. So I don't think the bureaucracy is really as much of maybe the timeline the agency takes to do a few things, and then by the time it got to ANI, it takes a day and a half. So I think sometimes a director, I will say that for myself, seems like a long time because maybe I have required things to happen in my agency before it goes to ANI. So that's what we've found out when directors are like, why does it take so long? Well, really, it took so long in your agency because of the requirements. But when it got to ANI, we have 90 days to do reclass. We never, well, I won't say never. It is very rare that it takes that long. The only time it would take that long is if maybe it's a new program, something like that. If the legislature maybe does or does not want those positions, that's why the 90 days allowance is there. So I think the longest one took 5 days once it was with ANI. And there was only one position that we changed from we downgraded. So the agency asks for a 5-level position for food service or something similar. We looked at the JCQ that they gave us and we said, well, it's really a warehouse person and it's a 4. It's the only one that we disagreed with the agency, but it was still approved. So I want to open that up if you have any other questions about that. And I can have Aaron answer some of the specific questions if you like.
Committee? Yes, Co-Chairman Boner.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate it. And that's just to set up a little bit. What we're looking at is we're, taking a hard look at all the things that led to the result that we had. And certainly, I think the one that's most talked about was Guernsey's rural nature. But and I don't disagree with that for a second. But what I want to avoid is just saying, well, there's one reason, that's it, and not consider what other challenges may have led to the result that we had last year. And so I still think it comes down to personnel, absolutely. And of course, how you pay personnel is a very important part of that. And that's why you're here. So I've learned a lot reading your memo, I'll tell you that. And I've been doing this for 8 years about how our personnel system works in the state, and just it's not something I was familiar with. So that being said, I'm looking at page 4 of the memo. Looks like, and I understand this was a moving target given the recent, the increases for state employee compensation. But so I'm verifying I understand this. Say for a cadet team leader, you could have in theory offered up to $27 an hour that's for the starting position, right? Make sure I understand that. Is that correct?
Ms. Williams.
That is correct, Chairman Brown. I'm Co-Chair Boner. You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
The agency, per our compensation policy, has the authority to hire positions and fill them from the minimum of the pay table to the market policy position.
Okay. And that's the question I had, which and maybe this is just my ignorance. If you have a bunch of vacant positions, the idea would be you just offer the ones that are available more pay and make a decision not to fill a position. Is that something that's possible? So what I'm trying to get at is, is this a pay grade issue, or was it a budget issue? Were they appropriating all their funds they had that the legislature gave them to try and fill these positions? What was the limiting factor in your perspective?
Ms. Williams.
Chairman Brown, Co-Chair Boner, you're absolutely correct. With the latitude that the compensation policy allows an agency, it's definitely subject to confines of the agency budget and how those individual positions are budgeted. There is language in the compensation policy that the agencies can defund vacant positions to a certain level and reallocate those to positions that are priority. We work very closely with the state budget department on that. I understand there's a piece of these positions with federal funding and some limitations there that I'm not necessarily familiar with. I do know with the 310 limitations, through the state budgeting process we have now, initially, I think what was a piece of the problem for the military department was those positions were originally brought in and paid at the 81%. so the lower end of the pay table. And so that's why we chose to highlight, with the work that we've been doing with collaboratively with the governor's office and the legislature, many agencies were at the bottom of that pay table. So we've worked very diligently over the past 2 cycles to at least get positions to the 90% of the pay table. And I do, understand and agree with the military department paying at the lower end. It's really you don't want to come into the Human Resources Division and say, I need to fill these positions. I need to fill at 90%. And you have existing long-term employees down at 81%. They don't want to create compression or jump over individuals. And so that's why we tried to clarify in our memo the difference between reclassification and compensation. There's a very distinct difference. And so, as Director Bach had mentioned, the classification requests that we received, there were also compensation requests that the Wyoming Military Department had recommended. Since 2018, we had not denied a salary request. So in 2020, there was some requests for some add-ons or some base pay adjustments for SOY SO5s and SOY SO7s. I think they moved from $19.68 an hour or $16.68 an hour to $19 an hour. And then the higher level position, the agency requested to move to $22 an hour. And we approved all those requests as well.
Anything further? Okay. Committee, any questions for Director Bach? Yeah, Miss. Oh, okay, let's go ahead. Senator Kolb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And maybe I missed this, so forgive me. So if you have you're trying to hire new employees and you have current employees, and the new hire you paid, say, $20 an hour, just use an arbitrary number, and the past hire was $18 an hour. Do you reevaluate who you've hired for $18 an hour and move that up to 20, or do you just keep them as you hired them originally? Could you please help me with that? Thank you, Mr.
Sure,
Chairman.
Chairman Brown.
Director.
Thank you. Senator Kolb, I'm answering that as a director because the ANI HRD doesn't hire the folks, so the directors hire it. So if I was trying to hire somebody in, I had vacant positions, I can't hire them at the current rate. I would have to evaluate my budget at that point on how to deal with that. That's, I think if any directors are listening to that, this is our hardest problem. Or it was. It's a little better now. It's a lot better now, given what the legislature was able to do and give us a funding. But back here, when we're talking about the Youth Challenge program, it would have been a struggle depending on what the budget that the TAG had at that point. So if you want to hire somebody in, they're only going to take $20 an hour to do it. They're working right next to somebody who's been here for 4 years, 10 years in Guernsey, making $2 less an hour. That's untenable. That's not going to work. So you bring it down, and that's why you get stuck at this 80%. If you don't have the budget to adjust those numbers on your own, then it's problematic. So I understand why sometimes directors get into this position, but it is more of how they deal with their budget than anything to do with how you classify a position. So the other thing that I wanted to mention was, I think we did do I believe the military did a study on the federal side on these positions, and they were paying $19 an hour. So we were not out of line once we looked at it. And that's where the problem comes. We may not be out of line, but maybe we should be paying $2 more an hour than the feds were paying, or what they say to pay. But the TAG is limited to the budget that he has. So it's I don't want to say it's a circular problem, but it is. You want to pay them more. You can pay the 2 people that you're going to hire more because you have $20. You're stuck with the people that are working for 18. It's an untenable position. So it's getting better with the compensation adjustments. I will say that that's much better now. If you saw the letter and the discussion that we had on page 4, it shows that if we were able to keep it open and this is what they would be paid now, it's a significant difference given what you guys have done, and we appreciate that very much.
Ms. Williams, did you have
Chairman
something?
Brown, Senator Kolb, when agencies, if they came to us and the positions were all filled at $16.68 an hour and said, we need to bring in our new people at $19 an hour, the Human Resources Division would request back to the agency to look at all existing employees and work with them within their funding to move those employees up as well. And that was some of the requests that received in 2020 did exactly that. We readjusted the entry hiring rate and adjusted existing staff to that same rate.
Even just for that, just to kind of put it in perspective, in my time in the executive branch 10 years ago now, but you run into the situation where you say, okay, well, I want 19, but you don't have the budget for 19 when you have to bring everybody else up. So we're going to split the baby and everybody's going to come in at 1750. And now I've got somebody who's been here for 4 years walking in, making the exact same amount as somebody who just walked in off the streets making 1750. So Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, therein lies the conundrum. I mean, you have a situation where you've identified that the wage should be, well, say $20 an hour. And then you have people not reevaluating their own employees to say that they should be at $20 an hour. If they're going to, so it's retention. We didn't retain them, they left. That's my concern. We left because why? I'm not sure. I mean, it sounds like the other guy did it. And here we sit without a program and it failed. And there's many other situations very similar to this in other places, right? It could be whatever discipline it may be in, but I don't know why our policy isn't, if you've evaluated your folks and they should be at $20 an hour, that's who you have to hire. For goodness sake, why wouldn't you pay your existing employees $20 an hour and figure it out with your budget? That's my really question is, why isn't that our policy? Thank you.
I think without putting the director and anybody else in the position, it's because the legislature chose not to provide pay raises during economic downtimes that the state didn't have it. I think that's a big portion of it. You know, on our side, from recognizing what the employees were putting forward, granted, we had $600 million shortfalls in our budget. It wasn't in our bailiwick to go ahead and say, okay, let's do another 5% increase in pay as well. But I think that's a big portion of it. Director, do you have anything beyond that? I don't want to put you in the position to have to say that out loud, so.
Chairman Brown, Senator Kolb, it is an issue. And it's not necessarily pointing fingers from the agency to ANI or to budget. It is about what is allocated. And if we're allocated a certain amount of money in our 100 series, we have to work through that. And if I, as a director, I can pay from the minimum to MPP. Well, now I can only pay 90% to MPP. We've kind of cut off that last 10% to help. So if I'm budgeted for a certain amount, I cannot pay more than what I have in that position. I can't look at another position that's vacant and say, I'm going to defund that and use that money to help across the board. We have closed that on the compensation policy. So if we don't have it allocated for that position, which is how we're budgeted in the 100 series, we don't have a lot of control. Well, there's things we can do. And I think some of that is education for the directors, like the add-on pay. So if I'm in a situation where I have, and I'm going to use the Cowboy Challenge program, if I had somebody who's making $18 an hour, say all four of them are making 18, and I want to hire somebody in at 19, if I can figure out a way to do an add-on until I can ask the legislature or figure out with budget for more money, I'm going to give $1 add-on to the rest, or maybe $1.50. So we're paying them $1.50 more. Those are the things you can do. But generally speaking, especially in agencies that are smaller, it's pretty tight. There's not a lot you can do. And you can use some of the add-ons, like with vacancy savings, but you can no longer defund a position and spread that around. So I think we work as well as we can with the budget. And I'm not saying it's all budget. I'm saying that's one of the biggest problems, because you as a director could pay MPP to everybody, but you don't have the funding for that.
And I would say, just going back to the budget too, or the memo, I'm sorry, I think probably the most striking to me, it was the third paragraph on page 4, where it talks about these pay grades experienced a 13 to 19% market lag. However, the market value, or MPP, was only 3 to 4% behind. What that tells me is the appropriation of the 100 series from the legislature to this area lagged by, let's just call it 17%, even though the pay tables showed that they were only 3 or 4% behind. So kind of a like I say, it's a conundrum and it puts us in a situation. Yes, Senator Cole?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't taking the Wayback Machine to redo the budget and the shortfalls we had. That wasn't my intention. My intention was to understand, I think, what you explained, if I understand it correctly, that you're restricted from going back to, I don't know, using other monies to make another position whole or more up to an appropriate level for funding because of the structure of what you have to deal with. Is that correct?
Ms. Williams?
Chairman Brown, Senator Kolb, you're absolutely correct.
Okay. Yes, Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recently had the opportunity to sit down with the director of the Wyoming Boys School for several hours, and this is one of the things we discussed specifically. And his comment to me was, he says, my budget is fine. He says, I have enough money, but I can't move it around at my discretion. And so am I understanding right that if it's 100 level, it might be able to move some 900 level money in there if you have a subcontractor or something, but you can't take money from building maintenance and pay somebody extra?
So the general rule of thumb for everybody, when you look at how budgeting is broken down, you have 100 to 900 series. 100 is your employees' compensation. You can always move money down, but you can't move money up. That's the general rule of thumb. So you can't take something out of an 800 series and move it up to 100 series to cover a budget shortfall there, because you have, well, 900 is actually where a lot of the people tried to do it back in the day, was they'd move it out of contract services and say, I don't have any use for this contract, but I want to pay for an employee instead. So that's the general way. But yes, Representative Pendergraft, follow up.
Thank you. So then you had mentioned that certain agencies could come to you and request an addition to increase that funding. Is that what this particular director then would have to do if he finds himself, he's not able to pay people sufficiently to fill the spot? I mean, McDonald's is paying better than he is. So could he then come to you and request some help?
Director?
Chairman Brown, Representative Pendergraft, the directors can come to us, or the supervisors can come to us to try to figure out a pay issue. We don't have anything to do with the budget, so they can't come and ask for funding. But what we can say is, well, you have vacancies, and until you can figure out how to get more money in your budget, we can allow you to do an add-on pay. So you have your base pay is going to stay the same, but because there's vacancy savings, we can add $100 a month for an add-on or something like that. So that's something we work with the directors on in lieu of not having the budget for that position.
Okay. Committee, any further questions for A&I? General, I noticed you joined us up here. If you'd like to add on anything additional, you're more than welcome to.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just, and back to where Senator Kolb was going, I just wanted to be clear that really the function of funding and the raises did not lie with a lack of support from A&I and the constraints that were there. A&I does a great job of advising us and talking to us and getting after. That is not where the issue lies. It's the other side of the thing with the federal match that we really have some constraints and restrictions on. We can only use 80% of that towards salaries. We're further constrained with another 75% of a GS level. So I will just tell you, it's very complex and complicated for us to figure that out. But I will also tell you that we worked it hard. I mean, we were, I mean, I'm not very smart, but I know in order to attract employees, you got to pay them well. So we spent a lot of time, effort, and energy trying to figure that out, balancing the restrictions and constraints on the federal side with what the budget that we had. So I just want you to be clear, it wasn't the state's lack of support or even lack of money in some cases that got us there. It was one of the limitations in some cases that she discussed, but more it was on the federal side of how much of that federal money we could use to match and supplement. And the constraints of that kept us on there. So I just wanted to be clear that it wasn't, A&I's been great to us and does a good job. And I don't really see that the state, the state piece of it, that's not what binds us up. It was the federal matching as we get after that.
Co-chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that does help quite a bit, because even we've heard it said publicly, well, the reason why the program fails, you darn legislators are so stingy with the funding. And I just want to set the record straight that that's, because we did see budget reductions. And this probably, the last time we had that discussion, whether we're going to keep the program or not, I think it ended up being about a 10% roughly reduction in state funds, school foundation program funds to this program. So that was I think something that we did need to hear, except it was an open question in my mind. So that is good to know. And certainly, once again, understand this is a program with a lot of federal influence. If there's anything we can do to help, that's what we're here for, to make this a little bit easier. So I do appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. And yeah, certainly, I was skeptical enough, reading some of the portions of this memo about, using statewide averages, or, how's that work in Guernsey, Wyoming, or not work in Guernsey, Wyoming. It's going to be very localized based off the community, but I imagine that's why you have the flexibility within those ranges. So I do appreciate that, General. And so I was going to ask the question, but I guess you already answered it. What was the limiting factor here? And it sounds like the federal constraints were the limiting factor.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I think that's very true. That it's, like I said, it is very complicated to work through this, trying to match those up. But the team does a great job. I'll also just take you back to what was going on in the state of Wyoming that time during COVID. As Director Bach mentioned, and so did Administrator Williams, we started out in 2019 with $16.89 an hour, 81%. By the 1st of July 23, that would have been risen to $20.66 an hour, 66 cents an hour. Because of COVID and the lack of people, the high price of gas prices, all that kind of stuff that sort of played into that also had the effect of just draining the staff away, to the point where I did make the decision that we just couldn't do it safely anymore. So I just remind us of that set of circumstances. I never was able to really determine if $20.66 an hour was the magic number or not, or whatever that is. So I just offer that as context. Thank you.
Okay, committee, any further? Oh, yes, Ms. Bach.
Chairman Brown, I just wanted to mention, because not everybody is in the world of personnel like we are. One of the things that I've been reading lately, and hopefully it changes in 2024, it is definitely an employee market and has been since COVID. And I think we've all seen that, whether you're in the private sector or the state. We're hopeful that coming in 2024, it does get better for employers to find people, for people to apply for jobs. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick. I'm not sure if it's the change in who's got the upper hand or if it's because of our comp. I generally like to think it's because of the comp that the legislature has allocated. So I just wanted to put that out there. The private sector, state, everybody's having the same problems finding employees and finding quality employees. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, committee. We're going to move on to, I believe we did get Idaho, I heard. And we've got an Idaho representative from their challenge program. And actually what I'll do for this is, Co-Chairman, you had some very direct questions in relation to how they funded their program and some of the stuff that they did. So if you would like to ask directly to, looks like Boomer, is that right? Mr. Boomer, is that correct?
Guy Bonner.
Bomber. I was close.
Bonner
I'm
with
going to turn this over to the co-chairman, and I'll have him just go over some of the questions that he may have for you.
Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you, sir. Appreciate you being with us here. I'm sure you're aware of the situation that we're dealing with, and we thought it'd be useful to get perspective of another Western state that, well, I heard has a very successful youth challenge program. So I just say, generally speaking, first of all, just introduce yourself, your experience, explain the experience you have in this area, what your job title is, and so on, and just explain the way that your program is administered, what you think works, what maybe doesn't work, and maybe we're just looking for some lessons learned from your program to see, what we may want to consider moving forward if we get our program back up and running. So once again, thanks for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Guy Bonner, and I'm the program's coordinator right now. I was the commandant for about 7 years. I've been with the program since it began in 2013. We stood it up. For everybody, it was a learning curve. So some of the struggles that they're talking about, we definitely experienced.
Uh-oh. We're going to give it just a few more seconds, Guy. I think we lost you. I don't know if you can hear us or not on the other end, but you also got caught with a great frozen.
I don't know if I should
There
just
we
use. Okay, I was just saying, I hope my internet holds up for you. I'm at Washington at a conference right now where we're doing some stuff with some other academies. So I
Appreciate you
apologize.
taking the time. No, you're okay. Well, we'll go ahead and let you just keep on going.
Yeah, so I helped stand it up 10 years ago. Some of the things that we did that worked at the beginning was they are correct that you only have so much budget for your payroll from the federal side, but you're also limited in ratios of like however many students you're picking up, that's how many cadre you can have. This is how many case advocates you can have. Generally, most challenges struggle with the fact that, well, I can have 20 some positions, but I only have the budget for this many of them. A lot of that goes to what rate you start at. So what we got lucky was in the beginning, our commandant, the original one, made the call to just pay higher and have less cadre positions. And I know I'm focusing on cadre, but they are the hub of the organization. There's the most of your positions are typically going to be cadre. We have about 60 employees, but 27 of them are cadre where we're at right now. Then you have your case advocates and your dining facility and your logistics and budget. I will say the key was figuring out a good pay at the beginning so you didn't have to do some of these catch-ups later and then have staggered employees where you're bringing somebody in at a certain rate and the other ones are still stuck at the old. My suggestion would be to bring the old ones up before you added a position in that case. But for us, it was starting out at that rate. So we took less people. It wasn't a struggle. We had 19 cadre. And we made it work with the team. And then as we gained more positions based on more students that we were graduating, hitting our targets, our budgets rose on the federal side. So in that arena, perfect. I would also say when it comes to hiring, it depends on where you're at. If you're in a remote place like we are, a good chunk of your people are going to come from the populace that live there. And so definitely having the good pay that attracts the current climate for that current area, city, town, whatever it is. And then the other little chunk, and the percentages are going to differ from where you are, but that other chunk of employees is going to be relocating people. So what am I attracting? First of all, it's the job, it's the change, it's the reward, but there's got to be pay that comes along with it. And I don't know what that magic number is for your state, but right now our cadre are at $22 an hour. We started out at about 18, almost 19, and our starting pay is at 22. But then every year, military pay scale wise, there is the certain percent increase in pay on the normal payroll, and that just each year goes up. We've had a couple times where that's been frozen due to certain things in the state, pay raises, but for the most part, they always play catch up and do well for us when the state is in the red. So anyway, that's just the points that I have. If anybody has any questions for me, I mean, I didn't really know where your angle was, but after I listened for a little while, I think I was getting it. There is more to it than just pay. It is definitely, like I think the director said, was quality, right? So you're talking about the quality of employees and that they understand the family mindset of the staff that are there. And that's something we have in Idaho that's different than a few academies that I've attended, is that there's no walls. The departments definitely need to communicate. And it can't be, well, we're the counselors, case advocates, you can't have that information, or we're cadres, so we don't have that, or we're teachers, you shouldn't have that information. We are very open. These individuals sign, like they said, a document that is gives us in loco parente, we are the parents. We have access to all any one of the cadre can know these kids' grades instead of the whole, and it's real, but there's the laws against anybody, seeing those grades other than the parent and the child. We don't have those constraints. And the sooner academies gather that and they communicate better, you'll see that it flows better, because really the kids, the graduates, and that cadre population are huge in the success of an academy. There's just a lot of dynamics to it. I won't go into it too much. We do have a good program in Challenge where they will send other challenges to academies that are starting up, and they will take those academies that are starting up to come to challenges like ours in Washington and others. And that's, I think, where they really make their money on how do we make our system flow with the challenge model right. But yes, at the beginning, I think you start with good pay and you start with the right positions. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, could you just describe it, and I appreciate the discussion about, pay is just one element of an important one, but, focusing on what we have control over in the legislature, I think that's why we're focusing on that. And there's some things that the executive branch just has to be able to do on their own initiative also. But, we spent a lot of time talking about Guernsey's rural nature. I'm just wondering if you could describe where your program is situated, what's the nearest town, how many people live in it, where's the nearest Walmart, how far is it away, that sort of thing. That'd be helpful for us.
Yeah, great question. So we're kind of at the dead end of a Highway 11. So there's 506 people in our population. We haven't done a census in a while, but I think it's up since we've had the academy and had more employees in the area. But we're around 500 plus. The next town to us is 10 miles away, and they were about 400 plus as we are. They're 10 miles away. It's probably about 25 minutes. The nearest city, if you want to call it that, is about 3,000. That's Orfino. They're about 45 minutes away from us. And then the nearest actual city would be Lewiston, Idaho, with about 30,000 plus. They're an hour and 45 minutes away from us. Now, Orfino, which is 45 minutes away from us, is the nearest place with like an actual legit hospital. We have a clinic in our town that a doctor comes to throughout the week, and we use that to take some of our trips. But when they aren't there, we just take our cadets for appointments all the way to Orfino. So that's kind of our dynamic when it comes to populations and how off the grid we are. For us, we call that a positive. It's great that the youth get to go to a place that's away from all the distractions and stuff. As far as challenge from the federal side, we were kind of the unicorn. We weren't supposed to work. We weren't supposed to exist. We were breaking the rules. In their startup procedures, you have to be within so far of a metropolitan city. You have to be so far from hospital sources and things of that nature. And we didn't meet that model, but some of those things can be waived with the right support. And so we were allowed that. And really from the background, it was like, well, if it's going to work, it's going to work, but I don't think it is. And of course, we're easily in the top 10 out of the challenges in the nation. It could be higher, but that's not for me to say. And it's just worked, but it's about all those things. Like you said, it's not just pay. It's not just, there's a lot of dynamics to challenge. You have like multiple departments. There's a lot when it comes to the relationship with the parents, the case advocates and the counselors and the cadre and the teachers and just everybody, how they work together is very important. And it has to be influenced and kind of demanded from the top down on how we're going to work together. And if not, you move on, because some people just aren't cut out for challenge, and you got to identify that fast and then move on. And most of it is just starting out on the right foot is what will get you successful. But yeah, we're pretty rural.
Okay. Well, thank you. One more. And so trying to consider a little bit more of the personnel dynamics. You mentioned your program's been around, it sounds like about 10 years. How many commandants have you had in that amount of time?
3. I was the 3rd, and I just moved. Our programs coordinator had retired. And so I just decided that'd be a good move to move over there and help continue the interdepartmental vibe that we had going on. I assumed, and I ended up assuming correctly, that my deputy commandant would move up into the commandant position, and that there would be this perfect world of, being a symbiotic about how we work with things. So definitely team mindset helped there. The initial commandant signed on. When we started, we had our director was a good friend of the TAG, had worked under him before, and so was selected to sign on for a certain amount of years to kind of help get this thing going. So our director went and found people like our our logistics manager, that person, and our budget officer. Those people were all people that worked with them in the Guard before at one point in time, but they were retired and were civilians now. So our commandant had signed on just for a little bit of time to help it get started. Most of the positions were like that in the department heads. Although we had one, our deputy commandant, who the director selected, was from here in Washington. And she is the director here in Washington, but back then she was not. She was an individual that knew challenge, had been around a long time. So we had that one seed that was planted in us to design everything as the deputy director. And then as the years went on, these people said, well, my 3 years is up. I'm moving on. You know, I promised you this long. So that's what our director kind of did, surrounded themselves with people they had worked with, good, you know, tight knit community that they had trusted and had a good mindset. And then had that one entity that just knew challenge in and out, had been in challenge probably like 15, almost 20 years. And they used that person's individual. Her name's Amy Steinhilber, and she's now the director in Washington. And so she helped set us up and give us the right mindset. So that's kind of, then Glick was there for Mr. Pete Glick was there for 1 year and then left. And our deputy director now, Melissa Browers, is the one who took over Commandant for a couple years. And then I had it from then on till now and just moved on.
All right. Mr. Balmer, thank you so much for your information. Is there any further questions from the committee yes, so I've got two for you, Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bonner. You mentioned being the parents. How do you maintain civility in the home to keep the kids around and to keep everybody on check? Thank you.
Okay. And you're talking about parents as it regards to the cadre, because they're pretty much the parents, I'm assuming, right? That's what you're meaning, the way I was speaking.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So the training that the cadre go through, first of all, when you stand up a program, the core that you hire need to be on the same mindset, same mission from the beginning. So that training needs to be consistent throughout. It can't be, well, in our platoon, we do it this way. In our platoon, we do it that way. Consistency, because that is what our youth are missing at home most of the time, right? It's that consistency. And so we try to make sure that we do that between each other. So even if, leadership 101, I might disagree with a guy, it's just a way, but I'm not going to go to that child and say, oh, they were totally wrong. They should have done it this way. No, I'm going to support that person, their decision. And behind the scenes, I'm going to say, hey, we probably want to go about that a different way because these are the things that could happen from it. But as far as the child knows, we were in one page. 2 people, 1 page. So it's kind of like preventing the mommy daddy scenario. And then that has to also be done, not just within the cadre, but when the cadet puts in their request to see a staff member and they want to talk to their case advocate or their counselor. That counselor and case advocate, of course, are keeping an open mind. They hear something that's alarming. They're going to want to talk about it behind closed doors to figure out what's true. Staff member always gets the benefit of the doubt, but we still look into it. But as far as the child knows, we're usually finding a way to uphold why that cadre might have gave them that consequence or why they might have not took their question at the time. So those type of things is how we work the relationship as parents, trying to keep that dynamic out of it. So it's the consistency and supporting the other person regardless, not having a negative thought, having a positive thought, and then moving on and figuring out the back channels. Again, that's from the director down, though. The director, the deputy director, those individuals are creating that atmosphere in their employees, but also identifying it fast when it's not there, and helping to mentor employees into that mindset. And if we realize we can't, and I'll say this, state, when it comes to HR stuff in our state, and I'm sure it's the same in every other one's, man, is it impossible for an employee that is not performing to standard and does not listen to the mentoring that's being given to them. That time needs to be short on the decision when we say, okay, moving on. And I know that's easy for me to say, and it's different in the world of state level HR, but it is something that can be a hindrance. You've got to move on if somebody does not meet the challenge model and the mindset of what we're trying to do for these youth. So that's kind of how we counteract that. And then we involve the parents. They were speaking earlier about parents having skin in the game. We have a whole process for that. Most challenges do some kind of like a drop-on request because it's a voluntary thing. But when they do say, I'm not wanting to do this anymore, we don't make that be a snap decision. That's a process that takes just as much time as they got into it. That's what we tell them. The amount of work you did applying is the amount of work you will do trying to go home. It's possible, but you're going to need to speak to your mentor. You're going to need to speak to your master sergeant. Well, that'd be your cadre. You're going to need to speak to your parents. And most of the time it came down to a conference call in my office as a commandant. And that's when I would be speaking with the student and the parents. And there's got to be leverage at home. There's got to be leverage in their life. If there isn't, then, sometimes we lose cadets because there's just nothing holding over the head. That but if the parents are firm and strong, and most of the time I did a phone call to the parents prior to kind of prep them and help guide them on some of the things that. And then that's a difficult thing. You got to be a parent whisperer because they're not always making good decisions at home as a parent. Sometimes that's why we have these youth. And so helping them to understand where your foot needs to be and what you need to say and how you need to say it and how you need to support the child while also enforcing discipline. And then after that coaching, then the cadet comes to my office and I have the conference call. So that's one of the ways that we also helped the cadets. And then I had previously spoke about our interdepartmental working together as staff.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bomber. One more question, Representative Berger.
Yeah, quick question and maybe a follow-up. How do you feel that you have really good support from your the state legislature in Idaho and your Department of Education?
I would tell you that's probably the number one. We can talk about pay. We can talk about how we work together as staff members. We can talk about how we draw the youth in and how we work with the parents all day till we're blue in the face. If you do not have TAG support, governor support, legislature support, it isn't going to work. I don't care if, okay, go ahead, sir.
Follow up. Sorry, Mr. I'm just making it quick. You answered my question there, but is there reasons why you think that you wouldn't have support from them, or what would give you cause that maybe you wouldn't have support from your legislature or your Department of Ed or your governor?
It's all about fear of liability. When you're at a state level and you're in those high positions, I mean, a TAG's got a lot on their plate, and there is a lot of great TAGs out there. And even the ones that may kind of shy away from a challenge doesn't mean they're not a great TAG. They just, I think sometimes as a state level leadership, we err on the side of caution, liability. We already have a lot on our plate. Do I need this in my life? Do we need it? Right? And they don't understand. And, it's our youth. It's tomorrow's youth. And there's nothing more that you should be taking a risk for. And who cares if it fails? Get back up, find out what failed, and do it again. Like, what else are you going to do? Sit around and just let the same systems keep not working? I don't know what to say. At the end of the day, that's the importance.
Appreciate it, Mr. Bomber. Thank you. Any further questions? Left side, right side. Seeing none. Thank you very much for your information. Very insightful. And we do appreciate you taking time away from your conference so thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. We'll come back here. General, Mr. Smith, anything further from you guys? Okay. Do we have any public comment? Please come on forward. I'd also like to take just a second while you're coming forward, please just recognize Representative Allred for joining us this morning. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for driving all the way across the state to come see us. I know that's the only reason you're here, so appreciate that. Sir, if you would please introduce yourself, first and last name for the record, and the floor is yours.
I'm Colonel Retired Joe Michaels from Guernsey, Wyoming. I retired from a full-time position with the Guard in '02. When we stood the Youth Challenge program up in '05, I was hired as a budget officer. When our first director left, I was hired as a director. I am currently a council member for the town of Guernsey. So I kind of walk the walk and talk the talk. So your proposal that's out here, I'm totally in favor of, with a couple of caveats. One, it's a great stopgap measure. We have to continue to support our youth, and Chairman Brown and the committee, I'd like to thank you for your support of the youth of Wyoming. The thing that we need to keep in focus here is that this is an alternative high school. It's not a derogatory thing to try and get kids that have lost their way and are in jail and this, that, and the other thing. This is an alternative high school. Very highly choreographed, as was mentioned from Idaho. Everybody needs to be trained. They need to be on the same sheet of music. Senator Boner, as you mentioned, Walmart in one of your comments, hiring people to work in Guernsey, Wyoming, and you tell the spouse that the closest Walmart is 100 miles away, they very quickly lost interest. So The one big caveat that I would have is that this is a stopgap measure, and I would include in here that the military department shall produce a viable alternative as to how we could reintroduce a residential program, because there is a need for this in the state. And I would, for my foxhole, recommend that you try and co-locate this with one of our community colleges. And the one that I think that would be the best would probably be Riverton. Reason being is when they complete the program, there is a job corps right there so that they can turn right straight around and learn how to get a profession and to continue on and to become a productive member of society. So this is a great program. It's very highly choreographed. We need to follow that program that the Guard Bureau puts out. I don't know if they're still, my information is somewhat dated. Dare Mighty Things used to be the ones that would work with us to make sure that everybody understood how the program was operated, how you dealt with 16, 17, 18-year-olds that lost their way. When you take their cell phone away from them and you now give them some rigor, and this is how you're going to get up, when you're going to eat, what you're going to do, how you're going to go to school, what class you're going to do. That is a huge social change for them. And we don't have to recreate the wheel. We just need to learn how to spin it. So again, I commend you for your support of the program. Would there be any questions that you have?
Committee, any questions for the retired colonel? Yes, Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, as director, I assume you experienced hiring difficulties, and that seems to be one of the issues, recruiting people to Guernsey. Do you have any comments regarding that? Thank you.
You're absolutely correct. That's why I said that I would co-locate this with one of our community college communities, Riverton, Powell, or Rock Springs. You have a larger community to draw to. I mean, Guernsey has 1,140 people in it. Trying to find 40 people, even from the local area, to be able to work there, find living quarters, things like that, it's very difficult. So coming up with a viable program to reinstate the residential phase, it would have to be in a larger community in Wyoming.
Anything further? Certainly. Co-chairman?
Oh, thank you, sir, for being here. Appreciate all your work, both in the Guard and later in life. And so certainly missed days where I went down to Platte County as part of my Senate district. But just want to, and just so we're a reminder to the committee, we are pursuing a level 1 study through the Building Commission. I believe that is something that will probably come from the governor. So we are looking down that course of action as well and making sure that, you know, we're have an eye towards restarting the program. Of course, the first step is going to be finding a location, as you point out. So these are parallel efforts. This will keep the program going, keep it viable within the state. This proposal we have before us, in addition, we will be looking at the process of restarting the program here in Wyoming and starting fresh. I think we've heard from some, at least the past 2 commenters that show it can be done. So thank you for your work, sir.
Well, thank you for your support.
Okay, anything further? I'll just echo the co-chairman's remarks. Thank you for driving all the way down here this morning for your testimony. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further public testimony? Seeing none, we'll close public testimony, and committee will bring the bill back up here to the dais. What's the committee's pleasure? It's been moved by Senator Furphy, seconded by Senator Brennan. Okay, committee, let's go ahead and work this bill. Again, we are on 24 LSO 0081. Make sure I load it up here, and we're working draft point 8. Let's go ahead and work through the bill. Nothing on page 1, of course. Let's go ahead and go into page 2. Any changes? Seeing none. Page 3. Page 4. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to bring back up my earlier question about skin in the game. Lines 13 through 15 talk about the state's liability, and I think the liability there they're thinking of is probably more of a legal than a financial aspect. But would it be appropriate to suggest that rules promulgated under this subsection shall include some sort of a default payment that the parents must come up with if the child does not stay?
I don't know that necessarily go right there. I think that that's certainly something the committee could entertain as a motion. If you want to make the motion, certainly debate the merits of that motion.
Sure. I would so move.
Okay, so moved. Seconded by Representative O'Hearn. Let's go ahead and go over some discussion. Do you want to go any further on your explanation, Representative? Okay. Any discussion on the motion committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah,
Senator Pappas?
I believe that language like that will actually discourage folks from using this program. I don't think it's very wise to do that. Again, as Mr. Smith mentioned, that they do have skin in the game. They do have other costs outside of the program to get their children into this program. I believe that it's worked well in the past without having to do some punitive measure like this. And I believe that it will actually discourage folks from putting their children in the program. So I'm just opposed to this amendment.
Okay. Anybody further? Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion to add, and I guess we'll work with LSO because we do not have a direct placement for this yet. We'll work with you guys if this passes to make sure that it's plugged in the right area, but there's a conceptual amendment to add that the rules shall, any rules promulgated shall require parents to pay back a portion of their students' tuition. Yep, students' tuition if they do not successfully finish the program. So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those in say no? No. Let's go ahead and see a show of hands here. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 online. All those opposed? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6, 7. That fails on a 7-7 tie. Unless Representative Obermueller was voting twice, because I could count him twice, I suppose. Representative Obermueller, you were an aye on that vote. Is that correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So that vote ties 7-7. That particular amendment does not pass. Committee, let's go ahead and continue working the bill here. Page 4. Page 5. Yes, Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask the military department to come up here. I think there was some discussion about what we could do to give them a little bit more flexibility. And it seems like that it would deal with the match here, which it seems to me that revolves around the limiting factor that we had when it comes to compensation. So I'm assuming Mr. Smith might have a suggestion for us here on page 5, line 20 or so. And I'm just wondering what that may be.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need a lot of technical help. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What Senator, Mr. Co-Chairman is talking about is we had discussed what else could be done in state statute to give maximum flexibility for wages in particular when we stand up, if we stand up in residence program. In looking at this part of the statute that the bill is addressing on page 5, 19.9, 702 and funding, subparagraph A of the current statute talks about for every 40 cents of federal funds, the state can expend an amount not to exceed 60 cents. This could, in a particular circumstance, be a limitation for being able to pay increased wages, because it is a hard cap, so to speak, that the state can't spend more than 60 cents to every 40 cents of the federal. So one of the suggestions that I had for an amendment to 19.9.702 on page 5 of the current bill, down on line 20, after the words federal funds period, would be to add a sentence. And again, haven't run this through LSO, I'm sure they can clean it up. But the sentence would say, the department may expend funds appropriated by the state in excess of the 60-cent amount on wages and benefits for program employees as necessary to recruit and retain employees with the approval of the Human Resources Division of the Department of A&I, period. That would be the language. I have it, I can give it to LSO. I think Senator Boner has it, but that would be a suggested amendment. Don't know if that would ever really be a cap, but it could be.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, so it's so moved by Senator Boner, seconded by Senator Brennan. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I was just, well, it's not on the motion now, but on line 20, couldn't we just put comma except for wages or salaries? Just call it good at that.
I think what we'll do is we'll give the authorization to LSO to make that work as fluid as possible and make sure that it reaches the intent of the motion. But if you guys want to add a comma or a period, make it any sentence. I don't think the chairman, either one of the chairmen really care. So any further discussion? Seeing none, all those, yes. Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment. I'm a conservative, which means that I care about the money that is spent, but I also care about people. And if you're going to do something, you need to do it right. People need to be paid what they deserve to be paid and hold a high standard. So I would be in favor of this.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion to basically work with LSO to make sure that we have language that allows an excess of the current statutory language of 60-cent match. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion passes. So Colonel Smith or Mr. Smith, I'll have you work with LSO. Just submit your language. You know, they know the intent and they'll get you squared away. So.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Committee, on to page 6. Seeing nothing, moving on to page 7. So I guess I would just make a statement here, more than making a motion here. If you guys notice, we've been talking about this program and there is a continuation of a sunset. I'm kind of curious what the committee's thoughts are on this, that the continuation of removing the sunset, extending the sunset has always put this program in a state of limbo, right? The program is always up for reconsideration, redetermination. There's always this moment that we just may not decide to re-extend this. So I'll make the motion to strike the sunset completely. Second has been made by Senator Pappas. Discussion. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. I was thinking the exact same thing. We're talking about things we can do to help with personnel. I'm guessing the idea that this program would just go away in whatever amount of time frame is not helpful at all. So I support the motion.
Okay, Representative Stibar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm for leaving the sunset in and shorten it, because if we actually set up another program, this portion of the statute we're doing now will go away because we'll have our own. This is letting them go out and coordinate to actually work with other states, correct?
The sunset is for the entirety of the challenge program. So 19.9.701 through 703, which is the entirety of the program. So it would be everything. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. If we get rid of the sunset date, how does that affect page 6, line 16, and the reversion of funds? Do we need to amend that? I don't like the idea that funds just sit out there indefinitely without ever being held accountable.
So I'll answer the question, then we'll come over to Senator Kolb. So the difference there's no real change in the way that the program would continue to function or operate. The reversion language, again, as we talked about at the beginning of opening up this bill, is really just making it to where if there's the way that the component, and I would guess that not all states also operate the same way that we did with their classes and when they start and when they don't. The reversion just allows them to hold the money out there and ask for us when they need the money as a budget and or a supplemental request, as opposed to reverting it all back at the end of the biennium. I think that it's probably a smart idea for us to keep this in as I'm thinking about this. If this bill were to pass for consideration into the session, we don't know what the other states are going to look like at this point, or maybe we do have an idea of when those states go, but the payment to those states for taking our children may be a little bit different than what we have currently. And so allowing the military department to hold on to those monies might not be a bad idea. Senator Boner.
And just to another point there is that, usually the way that we make these decisions as to how to move around funds is through the budget. It's not usually in statute. And so we still have that ability as legislators to, grab that. If there's just $2 million sitting in this account, it's not being used, it's probably going to be moved somewhere else. So that's usually the mechanism we use to make these sorts of decisions, not necessarily in the law.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just in thinking about this, we've got a program, it's an experimental program. We're trying to stand it up. We don't really know what we really need to do. I've got serious questions about the 6 people needed to run this program. And now we want to take away a sunset date that's going to be a safety valve in case we need to, I think we need to reevaluate this. I don't want to take away a sunset date. I understand there's negative consequences for having one. But I think in this case, because we're still trying to strike a path here, and it hasn't even been agreed to yet that this is the path we want to take. But with taking a sunset date out of it, I think I just don't think that's a wise choice at this point in time on a program that we're developing. Removing a sunset takes away the impetus for people developing a workable system because time is of the essence, obviously here, and not just a growing government and moving on with a program that we really don't know can work in the state of Wyoming. So I'm against removing the sunset date. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Senator Pappas.
I'm for removing the sunset date. I mean, we can always come back and remove the program at our leisure, at the legislature's future meetings. Can just remove the program. The problem I have, especially with such a short sunset, we're extending it 4 years, and if we're actually going to stand up a program and try to recruit people and say, well, you got a job for 4 years, which actually will be shorter than 4 years. Actually, I don't think that that's conducive to standing up a program. Now, if you want to leave a sunset date, I'd be willing to leave it if it was a longer sunset date, 10 years maybe. But I'd believe getting rid of a sunset date altogether is appropriate and not necessary to have it in the bill.
Okay, Representative Berger.
I'm gonna have to agree with that comment, Mr. Chairman, and on that notion, you're either in or you're out. You're all in or you're out. And if we're not all in on this, I mean, to be honest with you, I think this bill here is taking a step backwards from what the program was. I mean, that's just, and I don't like taking a step backwards. And, are we on our kids? Are we with these kids? Are we going to help these kids? Or are we going to just continue? I just don't see it solving the challenge program. It's a challenge program, and it's going to be a challenge for us. It's going to be a challenge for staff. If we're not going to make this a challenge, and if we're not going to get after it, then to me, this is fine. Take the sunset away. Have it there. If having it there, I don't think it's a full support of the legislature. I think it's just just 4 years. Come on, we're either in it or we're not. Let's make the decision and let's figure it out.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to keep the sunset date, and I like it where it is. I think that it keeps pressure on this committee to actually get this resolved and not, so to speak, kick the can down the road.
All right, committee. Well, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in. I really don't care which way the committee goes. This was a good topic and a good discussion. What I will tell you is the history of serving 8 years on this committee, this sunset date has been added and re-added and re-added, I think, every year. So I legitimately understand the concern and the thought process behind this of having it. But what I will tell you is just about every bill that we've ever had that has anything to do with this program, that sunset date is brought up and is re-questioned and re-brought up again. My reasoning for bringing this is exactly what was said, is you're either all in or you're all out. If we are going to move this forward, I'm certain it doesn't matter what this committee brings forward. There will be an additional topic of discussion on one of the House chambers to do the exact same thing. So with that being said, yes, Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like what Senator Pappas said, extend it out to at least 10 years. We need to look at this program. They failed 4 inspections. This committee was never notified of. We're all in for the kids, but we need to know what this program's doing. So I'm for leaving the sunset date in and extending it.
Okay, so I'm just going to re-put out the motion just so everybody understands exactly what we are voting on. The motion was to strike 19.9704, which is actually the sunset clause. So the entire sunset would be repealed. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. That motion fails. Okay. Any other motions on this particular area? Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion, we move the sunset date out 10 years.
So to
Whatever date that is.
2035 or to 2039?
2030.
That's a year.
Oh, yeah, 2035.
Okay.
Second the year.
So the motion is to extend the sunset date from 2025 to 2035. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? No. That motion passes. Okay. Ready? Let's go ahead and finish this up here. On to page 8. Board of Trustees, students' academic credits be transferred. Any changes there? Section 2. Oh, we do, yes. Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Line 16, where it says 6, I want to change that to 4 full-time positions.
Motion. Seconded by Senator Kolb. Discussion. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question that I should have asked earlier, but it didn't occur to me until after you were gone, so this question would be for the general probably. I believe I heard that you had 28 recruiters around the state. How many recruiters are you allocated? Are all those positions filled? I just want to get an idea of how busy those 28 guys are. Thank you.
General.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergrass, I've actually augmented, plussed up our recruiters in state. My number one priority is achieving in strength. So I think I've probably plussed up 4 on the Army side and a couple on the air side. And so they're pretty busy getting out there. We've got a lot of area to cover and a lot of communities, and it just takes people looking each other in the eye to do that. So I put more emphasis on that than what I've been resourced to do. I'll take risk in other locations or other areas of the organization to up our recruiting numbers.
Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you precluded, sir, from recruiting people for the Cowboy State Challenge while maybe their primary capacity is in guard recruitment? Would you please help me understand it? Thank you.
General?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Senator Cole, yes, sir. In effect, we are. That the recruiters are there to assess people into the National Guard of Wyoming, and that's where their funding and their mandate comes from. Again, as I maybe poorly explained earlier, these are 16, 17, 18-year-olds that currently at the time don't meet entrance standards for the Guard. After potentially they graduate and they receive a GED, that would be a step in the way. But what I have given guidance on, as our recruiters are out there talking and they see an individual that is potentially a candidate, that we hand those off. But it's not something that they, I'd say it's more in the course of doing business if they run across. They're not actively seeking those. They're seeking potential recruits for the Guard.
Committee, anything else? Representative Stivar and then Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But this could be an additional duty, is for them to pass them names off, get them in the cycle, and then just leave it, because the recruiter should be talking with the student counselors, doing their normal duties, correct?
General?
Chairman Brown, Representative Stivar, I don't believe I could legally direct them to go pursue individuals for the state program. I think that would be illegal for me to do that, an illegal order, which they would be perfectly fine in ignoring. As I said, we do try to create the environment, though, that if they come across of it, hey, let's hand it off to our recruiters. We're all on the same team trying to help the communities of Wyoming. So I don't believe I can legally mandate to them to do that. I don't think that's possible for me. I'm not probably willing to do that, but I certainly can create an environment where they share, where they interact, and where they can assist one another.
Okay, Senator Brennan?
Yeah, could you just kind of refresh our memories on the why behind requesting the 6 full-time positions? Where you've been out with this recruiting and why we're doing 6?
General, I think it's also important if you can, you guys are requesting 4 additional because you guys currently have 2. So if you can explain where you're at and what your lookout for is.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Brennan. The 6 is as we do what we call the mission analysis of what it takes, we'll run is what we think is most effective. We would like more recruiters, frankly. We had about 5 of them, sometimes 6 in the program when we were a full resident. But 4, we think, as Mr. Smith laid out, to hit the quadrants, that's good for us to get after it. The director is really the primary recruiter, too. That's one of their main jobs. Their job is to go out and liaison with the superintendent of public instruction, the different local school districts. That is really the purpose to get after it. The other 2 positions, one is that the transfer of credits. That's a little difficult sometimes to get that done. But the major portion of that is we still have a mentoring program that we run for a year following the resident portion. So coordinating all those mentors, training those mentors, keeping them up in contact and all that, it takes a lot of bandwidth and a lot of time to do that. And then the administrative person, as we run a lot of contracts, even with getting our folks to Nevada or wherever all the applications we have to do, all the recruiting stuff we have to do, social media sites, advertising, all that kind of stuff is what we sort of grouped under those places. So we think that 6 is probably the bare minimum. I would not be encouraged to go less than that because I think we'll have to sacrifice something somewhere, but that's what we look at. And as we look, if we're ramping this to the bridge to the resident program where we get between 50 and 60, I just think that's a good core group of folks to keep this program going and keep it as vital as we can.
Just for the committee's edification, thank you to staff who threw up the slides here. This is a good breakdown, rough breakdown of what the 2.34 million would go for on the screens here. Co-Chairman Boner?
I think you touched on one of the questions I had, which is the historic number of employees you have is in the 40, 50, 60 range. So just to have a little bit more background, going back even, more than a year or two, that's what we're looking at for staffing. But I guess my question is revolving around the amendment. I understand you can't necessarily have any efficiencies with your National Guard recruiters, but I did have a question about the administrative support, and wondering if you considered any efficiencies there with your staff. 'Cause I think one of the concerns I heard is all the HR complaints that are generated from just having it, working with at-risk youth. I'm assuming that would be taken on by the Challenge Academy where we're sending those kids. And so it seems like you do have more staff time available potentially. And so just wondering if you, maybe as we look at making sure that we're as efficient as possible, how would we consider, combining that administrative position in particular with, the folks that were apparently doing some of this work before at your headquarters?
General?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, thank you for that question. We are restricted in terms of who can do what work. I mean, that's something that caused us some pain in the past when we needed to hope, I had to send one of our 06s on the federal side up towards when it was in jeopardy to try to keep things together. That took a long time to get that done, and we were able to ultimately do it based on the duty position. But that was the only person that we could do that with. So we're very much restricted about who can do what work, federal work or state work. There's generally a bright line to that. This administrative person, if you look, application processes are fairly significant. Advertising of the program is fairly significant. Keeping track of the mentors, supporting the recruiters with information and products, I think is tremendous. I will tell you, 6 is the bare minimum that we came up with to get after. I think if we're going to be serious about it, that's what we need. Anything else will take some degradation in some point. I would definitely like to have more recruiters on there, but this is what I think we came down to at the end of it, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Pappas?
On and against the amendment, I too agree. And I've probably been closer to this program than most folks on this committee, being the ATAG when shortly after they stood up the program. And I know that these decisions on manning are not arbitrary. There's a lot of thought in going, into what we need to actually run programs. Military doesn't do those kind of things arbitrarily. And frankly, I think this amendment actually is arbitrary and capricious, just to say, oh, we're going to cut 2 people out. I just don't think that they've done a lot of work. They understand they need these folks. And if we are going to be all in, we're going to be all in, right? And I think that if we want a successful program, we need to believe what the military department is telling us, that they need these folks, and that they can't get by with less if we want to have a successful program. So on and against the amendment.
Any further discussion? Senator Kolb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern is this is bigger than us. You're going to get this thing through, you're going to need more than us. Okay, they're going to strip it, destroy it. So my question is what can you live with? I mean, you've asked for a lot, new employees, growing government in a program, that you believe in, and I think it's a good program, but I think my issue is being realistic about this. I can think whatever I want, and so can you, sir, but what can we get through? I want to get something through. I don't want something that's going to fail. And I think if we try to grab too much, it'll fail. Now, if you think that's wrong, I guess you could think that's wrong, but the reality is I see it's an issue. And the reality is I think we have to deal with these numbers and these new employees. And that's why I'm in favor of not having 6, total. So that just to explain and hear maybe what your thoughts is on that. What are your priorities, sir? I mean, what do you want to have happen? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, committee, I am going to pull us back here for a brief second. While I recognize that we're on a discussion topic, but we are actually working the bill. These would have been a much more appropriate discussion when the bill was presented. So I want to make sure that we're underneath the understanding here that we are not here to be questioning witnesses any further. These questions were more appropriately handled at the time of direct discussion. So I'm going to allow the general if he would like to continue this question, but I am going to pull back the discussion back to the dais. We are working a bill, and I would ask that we keep these discussions back on this side of the dais. General, if you would like, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Cole, I think I would probably start by saying, we're actually shrinking the government. We're going to return 51 positions back to the state of Wyoming based on going back to so that's probably where I would start with. And then, if I'm ineloquent in explaining what I think those 6 will do, I'll work on that between now and when we go in front of joint appropriations as we get after it. Like I said, we did a pretty in-depth mission analysis of all the things that we thought we needed to do, and 6 was our bare minimum. I'm not here to ask you for anything that I don't think we're going to do. I don't anticipate anybody with their feet up and their hands behind their necks on it. It's going to take a lot of work to keep this program going, to bridge to the resident phase, and we have a hole right now in terms of the messaging that is out there in our communities about the program, and we've got a ways to go. So I will just simply tell you, it's a value proposition that the legislature has to make. I will continue to do a better job of trying to explain those 6 to a better effect, but that's what we need, sir.
Senator?
And just some general discussion, since we're talking about fiscal concerns, I point out that the last time I ran the numbers, and you divide the number of state dollars per Wyoming students in the program, this is going back 2 or 3 years, it's about roughly $10,000 per student. So once you have a fully functional program, this is hands down the most efficient use of school foundation program dollars in the state. I'll try not to comment on how high a bar that is, but it's, and that's the discussion just that I think we need to keep in mind. If I don't want to, step over dollars to pick up nickels here. And so that is going to be an ongoing discussion that has been on, and frankly, there's a member of the House Appropriations Committee that sits in that, sits on the Billing Commission and still didn't understand some very basic facts about the cost savings to the state of Wyoming when we have a functional program. That's a battle we fought for 3 or 4 years now. They just don't want to believe, certain legislators do not want to believe that this is an efficient use of school foundation program funds, where it's a very easy equation in my mind. So with your, thanks for your leeway, Mr. Chairman, but I think, since we're worried about, saving money, being as efficient as we can with tax dollars, I think I felt the need to say that. And it is going to be a discussion, at least in one chamber, I guarantee you.
Okay. Committee, I think we have talked this one out. Everybody knows of the discussion on this. It is to remove 6 positions, insert 4. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, say no.
No.
That motion fails. Any further discussion and/or amendments on page 8? Moving on to page 9. Seeing none. Any further discussion on the bill?
Mr.
Representative Wiley?
Yeah, I want to thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman. I want to step back and kind of look at this as we've worked on it through interim, and I want to make it stated that the most important thing are these kids, but right now we already have safety nets in place. So however this moves forward, there's going to be avenues for at youth risk. We have several alternative high schools. We have the boys' school. We have the girls' school. There are still avenues for a safety net for these children. And that's the most important thing that we've been discussing all through interim. The thing that I'm having problems with is we've worked this and we've amended it and we've chopped it and we keep moving it around and shuffling it and we're trying to make it work. And the amount of effort that has been put into it this session and the previous sessions, I believe is an accolade to everybody's will for this thing to work and the good intentions. But I have concerns that there has been so much effort in trying to move this forward and to make it work that we're getting to the point to where we're throwing good money after bad. And maybe the most productive thing that we can do is to clear the slate, move this bill off, and then work on something later that can come back that is feasible and that will work. Because if we keep continuing to put up a program that is destined to fail, it's going to just be detrimental to the thing to where eventually it will not be a viability even to continue the discussion. So on this bill, I would, I think I'm going to support letting it go away and vote no on it. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Berger.
Mr. Chairman, I run fast, not half-fast. And this is running half-fast, and I don't want to be half-fast, and I can't do that. Can't see the work you've put in, Mr. Chairman, for 8 years go down to half-fast. And it's just the way it goes. And you got to be all in or all out. And that's what I want to see this. And this is the challenge. And I don't see we put the time and effort into this challenge. And I know we've worked pretty hard, but I'm a no on this right now because it's half-fast.
I want to make sure everybody's aware that was half-fast, not what everybody else was thinking we were hearing. So, Senator Brennan? No. Senator Brennan?
I'm going to be a yes vote on this bill. I think that we need to put our support and our full support. And I think keeping those 6 personnel is a good effort. We had something that maybe didn't work in the past. This is a different solution to the same problem in some ways. As we look at bringing something back here to Wyoming, I think it's imperative that we move this forward.
Okay. Representative Pendergraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've said several times, I love the concept here. I love what I think could be accomplished. But back in the very beginning, the people that understand how to put this together made certain requirements and said, you need to have a certain population, you need to have these basic rudiments in order for this to work. And we've tried it several times and it hasn't worked. Hats off to Idaho for making it work. I have no problem with funding the kids that want to go to another state. I am opposed to attempting to do this in Wyoming. I just do not believe that we have the population and the wherewithal to accomplish this fast.
Okay. Senator Bonner?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I want to urge everybody to vote aye on this. If no other reason, we find ourselves in a somewhat precarious position in that we have a statutory requirement to administer this program. And, if you want to get rid of the program, I suggest you vote for it. We have a vehicle to move forward, and then you can run an amendment that would delete the program. Delete all these statutes. That's an option under the title here. So right now, I think the only half-hearted thing we can do is to vote no and just give up. That's the only half-hearted option here. So I don't see any. We're in a tough spot because right now the reality doesn't match what the law requires. We have an obligation as the legislature to move this forward, I believe, and have those discussions on the floor. I guarantee you we will. Whether we just say, forget it, we're done with this. Totally, we're not even going to do so much as to send kids out of state as a bridge to get back up to a fully functional program. Or maybe that's a permanent solution, who knows? But I think we do have to vote for this bill because we have to have some sort of mechanism to have that discussion, and our colleagues deserve that opportunity as well, not just this committee. So regardless of your feelings on this program, where you think it's a good use or it maybe even competes with our schools and you're threatened by that, whatever the case may be, I think that we still have to vote yes and get this bill to the floor so we can have this discussion.
Sure. Okay, go Representative Berger quickly.
I guess, do we want a parent here in our state, or do we want to send our kids out of state to get taken care of out of state? And that's what I'm having a hard time with. I want to keep our kids here. I want to keep them as close as we can. We're not doing that. We didn't do that. Let's keep them here, and we're not figuring that out.
Okay.
I don't want to send them I don't want to pawn our kids off to some other state. It's just not me.
Senator Pappas, and then we're going to close it up because we are running tight on time, guys.
Mr. Chairman, on and definitely for this bill. You know, I don't really think you can take the analogy that we're pawning off these kids to other states. These kids need help. Okay, and if we have to send them to another state for now, let's do that and give these kids some help. All right? Let's not be parochial about this and say, oh, no, you know, if we can't keep them in the state, well, we won't give them the help then. No. And we can't wait until a new program gets stood up. Yes, things are not maybe like the way we want them, but to just discard everything we've done and say, okay, we're going to start over in another legislative session down the road, a year from now, and start from scratch, that still leaves a lot of kids without help, okay? And then it just puts us that much further behind the time curve. I think that we just need to keep plugging forward and doing the hard work, all right? Let's just vote yes on this bill. If we need to change it, we will change it. And if there's other ways to stand up a residency program down the line, having this in place is actually going to be more beneficial than starting from scratch. So on and for this bill, for the kids, because they do need the help. I don't want to see them falling through the cracks.
Okay, committee, I'm just going to say a couple quick words, and then we're going to go on to the vote here. I'm torn on this. Luckily for me, I get to be the last vote. So I get to decide whether or not this goes forward or not, huh? If we're tied out. So I see both sides of the argument here. Honestly, there's probably not been a more vocal advocate for this program since 2017 than myself. I've saved this program at least twice in the Appropriations Committee from being struck completely. All funding was going to be cut and it was just going to be gone. That was when we were facing $600 million shortfalls. I personally fought for that. I am not a fan of sending these kids out of state. I don't like this stopgap measure. I understand we do have a responsibility to take care of our youth. I would prefer us have found a way to get this set up in state. We don't have that opportunity right now. So this is kind of our only option. I am torn on exactly what this ultimately is going to look like, but I will tell you that based off of Representative Stivar's comments and knowing that this has been a continuous and ardent fight of this committee for 8 years, is where I tend to lean that I will vote no. I don't exactly know. I do think that this is a worthy discussion for our entire body. So if it comes out that it's the deciding vote, I'll end up probably voting aye to let it go to the floor and have this debate. But I think we're doing a disservice at this point by running half fast and not just getting this set up. I do think that we also have another race in this, or another horse in this race as well, that'll be going with the level 1 studies to see if we can't identify something else residency wise. And I think that that's good. I think that's the approved, or the thought that we want to approve something like that rather than this. But with that, committee, we are going to call for the question. Please do a roll call vote on 24 LSO 81.8 as amended.
Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Furphy? Aye. Senator Kolb?
No.
Senator Pappas? Aye. Representative Berger?
No.
Representative Nemec?
No.
Representative Obermueller?
No.
Representative O'Hearn?
No.
Representative Pendergraft?
No.
Representative Smith?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
No.
Representative Wiley?
No.
Co-Chairman Boner?
Aye.
Chairman Brown?
I feel better about this now, but I can't talk. No.
5 aye, 9 no.
All right, committee, that bill does not pass committee for consideration. That will move us right in. We are running about 15 minutes behind. That brings us to the AM sexual assault update. General, this is all you. Committee, you received a slide handout in person as well as, I believe it's updated online as well. Is that correct, LSO? Those of you that are using the, did you guys throw the new slides up on the? No, okay. Oh, they did. Okay, so it is online if you're using your computer as well. General, the floor is yours, sir.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I'm totally out of line asking this, but I could use a bio break very quickly if it pleases you. If not, I certainly have the discipline to hold on if we need to do that, but.
Discipline, huh? I'm trying to be a slave driver here. I just realized that it is 11:45. All right, let's take
Yes, sir.
5 minutes. Let's be back at 11:50. the slave driver chairman here was trying to make sure that we got done on time. That being said, I'll shut my mouth and let the general go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, lady and gentlemen of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I'd refer you to the slides that were handed up. I'm on slide 2. I thought I would take a very quick minute, understanding that we're under the constraints of time, just to give you a quick update of the Wyoming Military Department, and then we'll go into the report that I just provided to the governor. If you go to the next slide, slide 3, I just wanted to give you once again just a look at some of the fantastic people that we have serving in our formations. What you'll see on this slide is Sergeant Beck Bridger there in the left, Miss Wyoming. She is currently a sergeant in our 67th Army Band, and she competed in Miss Wyoming. She didn't win, but she represented Wyoming exceptionally well, and certainly our formation. We also, I believe you've heard me talk before, Specialist Luke Harrison is the Soldier of the Year in the National Guard. Won our state competition, won our regional competition, and won the national competition as the Soldier of the Year. This is our second one. We had our non-commissioned Officer of the Year last year. So an outstanding young soldier that serves both his community and the state and nation in uniform. So a great opportunity to just showcase him. The next slide, number 4, is Airman First Class Nathan Johnson. I just wanted to give you a quick story, if I could. He had just graduated from basic training in his advanced technical school at Keesler Air Force Base, and was flying back home when the pilot came over the intercom on a commercial flight and said, "Hey, is there anybody who has medical training?" Airman Johnson had just completed his EMT certification like 2 days before at training. And so he moved up to the aircraft, and there was himself and a former Navy firefighter trying to resuscitate unconscious female on the plane. And so they went right through the checklist. You know, we all know is what they do. They went through the checklist, and they landed the plane and got the individual off. The paramedics took a little time in coming, so the airman stayed with the patient the whole time. He missed his connecting flight, but he would not leave that patient until he had properly handed him off to a higher level of care. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of see some of the great people that we have, and what they're willing to sacrifice and what they're willing to do for their fellow residents. So very proud of them. So we go to the next slide, number 5. Very quickly, I think my priority is strength. We're going to need it. It's a dangerous world out there right now. You understand that. Air Guard's sitting at 93.7. They were 12 sessions short of the mission we gave them last year. This year's mission is 150. Army Guard is at 93.7%. They were actually 18 plus. So we ended up with probably a net 6 overall. We've got a session mission of 169 this upcoming year. I want to thank the legislature and this committee once again for supporting us in the referral program and our ability to transfer benefits. We've had 9 enlisted members so far this year that have received the referral bonus. It's starting to get out there. It's not where I want it to be yet, but I certainly appreciate it. Every single one helps, and thank you for your support of our formations. Very quickly, I just want to cover a couple of due-outs that we had from last time, and I think we're good. The first of the due-out was to send a letter to the State Building Commission and State Construction on level 1 and 2. We did that. I believe Senator Boner, co-chairman, was there that day. I believe the level 1 and 2 studies are going to be in the Capcom budget and going forward, so we'll keep an eye on that one. We needed to provide some final numbers for the referral program. It just became OBE, but we did do that. And lastly was the wage flexibility in the law. And again, we provided those numbers, but that's not going to be germane at the moment. But I just did want to come back and make sure that I fulfilled the commitments I made to you on what was due out. Was there any other due outs that potentially I may have missed that I owed you? All right. Very quickly, in the interest of time, I'll go to slide 6, and I'll just kind of skip to the important things here. First off, I'll tell you all the upcoming deployments that we had are pre-planned. Nothing that we did is in response to anything going on in Ukraine or Israel right now. These were all what we call GIF map or in support of combatant commands. and they were already pre-planned. So we have currently 3 Air Guard members out across several combatant commands. We're about to send 137 though to AFRICOM really the day after Thanksgiving. And so they'll go out for 180 days and do that mission. Later on in the spring, we'll have an additional 82 that are going to be spread out throughout the combatant commands to support their requirements. Army Guard deployments starting to, we got our 28 members back from Task Force Outrider and the aviation company. They're back and back to work, but we'll start deploying the Army side here next July. The first ones to go out will be the 2nd or 300th. That's our HIMARS rocket battalion. They'll have 16 launchers, and their folks will go along with them. We'll have the signal company that supports them will deploy. They'll go to Operation Spartan Shield, which is currently situated in CENTCOM between Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE. That's their mission. It's a mission that they've done before, and we'll be back doing that again. About 6 months after that, the brigade headquarters, the Field Artillery Brigade headquarters will deploy. They will actually become the higher headquarters for our guys when they get over there. So again, a mission that we've done before with the 115th, and they'll continue to do Spartan Shield. Joint Staff, this last year, the Joint Staff is primarily concerned with domestic operations. We finished a very successful Vigilant Guard, allowed us the opportunity to really test a lot of our SOPs and tactics and techniques and procedures with our civilian counterparts. Once in a lifetime opportunity, frankly, and it took the whole state for us to be able to do it, and was very successful. So far to date, we've conducted 23 search and rescue missions. And really our focus now in terms of within the state is focusing on protecting, our critical infrastructure and getting ready for the storm season, which at least we're anticipating it to be pretty wet this year. Very quickly, I'm just gonna, I'll go to slide 7 very quickly, get you to the Army Guard programs. I will tell you the very last, the Cheyenne geothermal microgrid power generation, we were awarded that through some federal funding through National Guard Bureau. It says 51 million there. I think it's going to wind up being closer to 63 million by the time that inflation and this thing gets built, which will start in 24 or 26, excuse me. What that does is provide some backup power to the Joint Force headquarters there right outside the base. It's natural gas and also solar that'll be put to it to be able to give us an alternate source of power in case the grid were to go down. So we're one of about 10 states that they're piloting this with, and we were fortunate to be able to get this one. So I'm pretty excited to get that.
General, got a
Yes, sir.
question here. Senator Kolb?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, what size generator
Oh, yes.
capacity is this?
Yes, sir. You're, Mr. Chairman, Senator Kolb, I'll have to get with you. I'm out of my expertise there.
I think it's one of those Honda 3000 generators.
6,000. It's a little.
General,
It is a
please.
little bigger. Yes, sir. Slide 8, just some Camp Gurgee projects. We did just get our ammunition supply point building completed, and we did the ribbon cutting. The barracks that I believe I briefed you before has broken ground, and we're getting after that. And the fire station that's coming to Guernsey is well on the way to getting the design completed. So good stuff going there. Very quickly, Tim, I'll come up if you wanted to talk Vets Commission very quickly, but before I turn it over to Mr. Shepard, any questions that I can answer about the team? I tell you, it's volatile out there that we know. Our focus really is on training our soldiers and airmen to get ready to do what the nation calls them to do. I don't know what that looks like yet. I will tell you that we're in competition right now, whether it's on the cyber level, the space, those kind of informational. We are facing threats all the time, and I don't exaggerate that threat. I probably don't do a good enough job explaining that threat. And if it's something that the committee would like at some point, I may be able to do that in an unclassified realm to give you a sense of what's going on out there in the world. But if nobody has anything, I'll turn it to Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Colonel. Those HIMARS, are talking about deployment in the Middle East area. Are they going to be used to protect our bases out there? I guess, what is their primary purpose? What are they protecting? Could you please help me? Thank you.
Yeah. Chairman Brown, Senator Kolb, That's an artillery system. It's a precision fire system. It will engage targets on the ground. It's not a defensive system in that aspect. So trying to think how, in the interest of classification, how far I can go into the mission. I don't think I can go very far, but I will tell you it's an offensive system designed to wreak havoc and destruction on the bad folks. That help?
Chairman Boner?
Well, I just follow, I mean, he had a similar deployment only a few years ago, and perhaps you can talk about that a little bit.
Chairman Brown's co-chairman, we have done that before. We usually just place those launchers throughout the country of Kuwait and Jordan, and their job is to support the command commander on the ground there.
I just have one quick question. Where are we at on the Jays?
Yeah. Wish I wouldn't.
I know our comrades up there in the next state to the northwest, we won't even say their name, have been lobbying fairly hard. Let me re-ask that question, and I'll just tell the committee where we're at. We did not get selected on this last round, and the Jays are the C-130 new variant of the C-130s that you see stationed up at the base here. We were not selected. Is there anything this committee can do? Can we write a letter of support? I mean, when you're dealing with congressional topics there, it kind of falls on deaf ears out there a lot, but is there anything that we can do to help?
Mr. Chairman, if I could think of anything else, I would certainly ask you. You guys have always been very supportive. The decision was actually delegated from the Secretary of the Air Force to the Director of the Air National Guard in this case, and we had some criteria in there that I thought we would do very well in. They evaluated a couple of missions that we did. Ultimately, we had that mission, and so does Nevada. Neither one of us were selected. It didn't carry much weight at the end of the day. Our congressionals are very well tuned into it. I did respond with a letter to the director expressing my concerns about how some decisions were reached. They've made some commitments to come out here and assist us in a couple of places, and at least to try to make them more aware of the challenges that we face. Bottom line, sir, is I don't think there's anything this committee can do other than I think continue to ask the questions. If there is anything, I will not hesitate to reach out.
Perfect. Thank you. Tim, I believe you're up. I've got some updates for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think following my predecessors there, I should introduce myself as Colonel Retired Tim Shepard. And please feel free to call me Colonel. The General knows I appreciate that. I did, and good morning to the committee. I did provide a handout. One other topic that I wanted to talk about just real quickly is the Highly Rural Transportation Program. That program has been very successful over the course of the last 3 years. Its aim is to get veterans to and from VA and VA approved appointments in highly rural areas. And so our program has been 7 counties over the course of the last 3 years. And this last year, we managed to get 3 more counties approved for Wyoming. So we're up to 10 counties. There are 17 counties that would be eligible, and our goal is to get all 17 back under Wyoming. But we're very pleased with the 3 that we picked up, which were Converse, Weston, and Crook. We're already starting to do rides in those areas. So program's going well.
Are those, just out of curiosity, Mr. Shepard, Colonel Shepard, retired? Are those?
I like that.
Are those rides being given to VAs here? Like, are they going to Sheridan and Cheyenne, or are they going over to Rapid City? The new counties.
Mr. Chairman, they can be going anywhere. It's a matter of where they start the ride. So if the individual is in, let's just say, Crook County and needs to go into South Dakota, we can provide that ride.
Excellent. Cool.
Or if they're coming down to Cheyenne, we can provide them the ride to Cheyenne. It's just a matter of where the ride originates.
Okay. Committee, any further questions for retired Colonel Shepard? Yes, Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Chairman. On your veteran service officer position, how many of them positions are out there? And how many do you have in like Casper?
So, Mr. Chairman, for the representative, we have 2 in Casper. We have a total of 8 service officers around the state. And then we also work with the 3 county service officers who are in the southwest portion of the state, and another one who is located up in Johnson and Sheridan counties.
Follow up?
With your service officers, are they authorized to submit everything through the VA system if they've been to Annapolis to go through that class as a service officer would with the VFW, American Legion, DAV?
Mr. Chairman, through you for the representative, we don't do the last step. The last step is done by the department service officers, which are the American Legion, the VFW, and the DAV.
I'm good.
Okay. Senator Culp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. I was reading your pamphlet here about the food cards that you hand out for veterans in need. You said it provides a $150 food card, individuals, $250 card for those with dependents. How often do you distribute these said cards? Is it once a month, once a week? Could you explain that?
Shepard.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, for the senator, our goal is to limit how many repeat cards we give out. And we do that by trying to educate the veterans when we give a food card on what are the other resources that are available. And in a lot of cases, we just talk about what situation the veteran's in, and is there something that one of our claims officers could do to help that veteran get more money through the VA. But so we really see it as a hand up, not a handout. And so we don't do them on a scheduled basis. We give a card, we talk with the veteran, we send them back out there. If they're not as successful as what we hope, and they're back in a situation where it appears they need another card, we'll give them one. But it's very situational.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shepard. Appreciate that. Anything further?
I don't think so, Representative. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, General, if you'll take us into the hot topic of our actual agenda here, the sexual assault update, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll direct you to the overview on our slide 2 there. I think you'll see 3 pillars or 3 common themes as we get through there. First one is care for our victims. We do an excellent job of caring for any victims that of sexual assault that are in our formation. The second thing is we're laser focused on prevention. Preventing this from happening is key. And lastly, we are determined to hold people accountable that don't live up to our standard of how we conduct ourselves. If I go to the next slide, the executive summary very quickly, it says that we are very much focused on all the corrosive behaviors, not just sexual assault, sexual harassment, but suicide, anything that divides us, that keeps us from being the winning set of force that we have to be to go do our job for the state and nation. I don't believe we have a culture in the Wyoming Military Department of sexual violence. I don't think that to be the case. None of the data I see, none of the people I talk to, none of the commanders I converse with, none of the senior enlisted leaders that I talk to believe that to be the case either. But we'd be remiss to not recognize that it's out there in our society, and that not just sexual assault, but drug addiction, fentanyl abuse, suicide, all those things that we are part of as being citizens of this country. I do think we do have a small number of individuals, though, that may lack the training, the emotional maturity, the ability to conduct themselves always in a manner that they're supposed to, particularly if you put alcohol in the mix to that. And that's where our focus is. Let me go to the next page. Overall assessment, victims are continuing to report. I'll get into the details later, but we're seeing reporting continue to happen, and not just for the current fiscal years, but previous years. An indicator to me that the victims are trusting the system more, that they're free to come forward about previous cases with the expectation that they'll receive services. We have a very strong relationship now, or getting stronger, with the Wyoming Department of Workforce Services based on some legislation that this committee passed last year. Provides an alternate means of reporting, gives us the ability for folks that if they may have concerns about the chain of command, have another place to report, but also gives us access to their investigative processes and some of the administrative processes that we lack. We've stood up the Integrated Primary Prevention Workforce. You may have heard me refer to that as the JSS, or the Joint Service System. We've changed that to the IPPW, the Integrated Prevention Workforce. That's the common nomenclature across the National Guard Bureau now. It is stood up and is resourced and continues to work right now. Mrs. Michelle Mulberry is our director, and what that really helps us do is see ourselves. We did not have the ability to really analyze some of our data, get after some of the policy making, and these folks have really helped us do that. And really, based on that, we've been able to get some better data that helps us focus our attention on where victims and where perpetrators may be in our formations. So we're able to provide our most vulnerable members with additional preventive training. If I go to the next slide, let me delve into this, the specific reports. There were 11 reported this year. 7 of those occurred in 23, 1 occurred in 21, and 3 in 2020. Of those, 3 were restricted. And if I remind the committee, restricted means really we don't have any information. They elected not to go to law enforcement. They just would like services. And that's what we provide. So we did that. So we don't have any data on that. That's part of the restricted access of this, or the restricted aspect of this. There's 5 that were unrestricted, 3 on the Army National Guard side and 2 on the Air National Guard. Started out with 2 potential perpetrators that were National Guard folks. One was looked into by law enforcement. Ultimately, it came out it was not a sexual assault. They don't even believe it was an assault at all. And but because we take the reporting seriously, we'll count it as that. But it wasn't. The other one is still under investigation by local law enforcement, and we'll see what the results of that are. There are 3 that we call limited participation, which means that they've been offered services, but however, they're not really taking advantage of that. So if I go to sexual harassment on the next one very quickly, I had 1 formal complaint that was substantiated. We administered administrative punishment for that, and that's where that's it. We just had the 1 harassment case that we dealt with. If I go to slide 7 on actions taken, I actually won't spend too much time in there. I believe you've seen it just in the interest of time, but it really talks about what we did with the IPPW. One of the findings that our external assessment looked at is the force was often confused about where to go if they wanted to report or had an issue. So we spent a lot of time trying to develop some pretty clean flow charts and access points. Really, we have that now, so there's really no wrong door. There's one place to go, and we'll get you to the right place. I'll tell you, I still think that we have some work to do there. It is, with all the statuses we have, and our people moving through those statuses, sometimes on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It really depends on the status, how we treat some of these. So I still think we have some work to do about making sure that's very clear to folks. And we spend most of our time at the front end of any incident after we care for the victim, really making sure that what status they're in and what way we should pursue it. We look forward to command actions for 24, which is we've got coming up. It is really the continued support of every victim and survivor of sexual assault or sexual harassment. We will continue to do that. We're going to do some more bystander training as we get into annual SAPR there. That's Sexual Assault Prevention Team and for the Wyoming Air National Guard. They did some bystander training a while ago. It was probably the most effective training I've ever been in that had to do with that, but they got away from it for a while. we're coming back around and we're going to do some more bystander training, which just means that if you see something going on, you can step in and prevent that from happening. We'll continue this discussion and oversight from the committee and the governor on providing this report to you. Really, we review our policies annually now based on what we found from the previous year, what the data is telling us about where our victims are. If there's any data that talks to us about perpetrators, we adjust our policies every year to get after those. So we're pretty agile in that sense. After this report next month, we'll do the same thing again. We'll get the team together and we'll relook at the policies once more. Lot of new guidance coming out in the Department of Defense on sexual harassment. They put some interim guidance out earlier this year. I just published my guidance for sexual harassment on the 19th of October. We're awaiting the final guidance from it, but it's a pretty significant change in terms of how we do business and how we've done business in the past. One of the things I will tell you, if an individual is accused of sexual harassment, on the Army side, you're supposed to be flagged, which means suspended action of favorable actions. Can't get promoted, can't receive awards, that sort of thing. The same requirement exists on the air side, but the air does not have a flagging process. So we really had to create an ability to do the flagging process. It's taken a little bit of time, and that's every National Guard, Air Force and Air National Guard unit is going through that same process. So a lot more guidance coming out on sexual harassment, but I think we're actually ahead of the curve on it and doing pretty good on getting the new guidance out. To that end, we have to investigate when sexual harassment is alleged. So we want to train a pool of investigators to get that done effectively and appropriately. What I will tell you is that if harassment occurs on the Army side, we'll be an air person that investigates. That's my intent, and vice versa. So nothing within ourselves, no chain of command issues there. We'll have an external set of people that will take a look at harassment. We're going to introduce some different level trainings to our recruit sustainment program, the level training, which just gives another sense of another level of training. If you'll recall, several years ago, we had some incidents of some of our young folks going to basic training. We're experiencing grooming activities there, that they were being groomed to be victims at the bases. And so we did some training to help them identify that, to make sure they understood what was going on, and knock on wood, since we've done that time, we've not experienced any actions, any sexual assaults at our basic training centers anymore. And it's not due strictly to that. Obviously, those commanders were very interested in making sure that didn't happen either. But I will tell you, I just think it's being able to arm our young men and women that are going there with the information is pretty important. We'll continue to hold folks accountable by imposing administrative punishment. As you may remember, we are prohibited from investigating sexual assault ourselves. We cannot do that. Local law enforcement has to do that. If they decline to do that, there is an office at the National Guard Bureau that's capable, that will come and do the investigation, but we are prohibited to do that, and we'll continue to hold folks accountable in the ways that we can. And I think that's it, that in terms of command actions. I will refer you to the sexual assault and harassment training on the next two slides, but really all that is to say we do a tremendous amount. I don't know of another organization on the planet that trains their people, whether they're new, whether they continue to serve, whether they've been in the organization for a long time. Everybody gets training, and we're focused on it. So that gives you the particulars of what they are, but it's a significant amount of training that our folks undergo. If I were to close and get ready to answer for your questions, I think that's what I would tell you is prevention is where our heads are at, keeping it from happening at all. Nothing breaks down trust. Nothing breaks down cohesiveness. Nothing breaks down our ability to fight and win on the battlefield than if we don't deal with this correctly. And myself and the commanders and all those that serve are committed to making sure that we root anybody out that doesn't act this way. If we have any predators in our ranks, they don't need to be here. And I'll leave it at that and stand for your questions.
Just have a quick question and then I'll open it up for the committee. Going back to the sexual assault cases, we have the 5 unrestricted. And it says of these 2 cases involved Wyoming National Guard perpetrators. So my understanding is that the other 3 were not National Guard perps, but rather victims, and that was just reported through to you guys. Can you help me understand? And I read the report, but I'm having a hard time remembering exactly how that was fleshed out.
You bet, Mr. Chairman. So if we look at the other 2, one was the perpetrator was a Title 10 person off of the base and committed against actually a family member. Actually a civilian member. They are serving our ranks on traditional side, but they were a civilian member when it happened. The other one had no military status, the victim status, but trying to think. I'm looking at my chart here on that particular one. No military status. It was our victim that was, the other 2 were not military perpetrators and our victims were in the military. So we just provided service to
And
them.
so is it a requirement that if they're sexually assaulted outside of their guard status or whatever the case may be, that it is reported to you guys and then that becomes a reportable offense to you guys, regardless if it's on or off duty?
Yeah, it's not a requirement. It is totally up to the victim to do it. We encourage it. And if it happens off duty, we still want to provide services.
That helps me. Thank you. Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Chairman. On the training, what kind of specialized training are these guys going to get to be investigators of sexual assaults?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, exactly. That's what we're working through right now of what's the specialized training. That's what we got to give them to be able to execute that correctly. But there's been no guidance really to come down on what that looks like. So we're kind of waiting for that.
Committee, any further questions? Nothing? Okay. General, thank you. I will tell you, committee, if you have not read the full report was very detailed. I appreciate the information that was listed in there. I think you guys are on the right track. I think we already see a decline, which I appreciate that. But as you stated in there, the goal is 0. And I think the committee, I speak for the committee when we say we support that full-heartedly. I think you're heading in the right direction. I think you guys are on the pathway to getting there. I don't know that we have anything else, Mr. Chairman, on that. Okay. Committee, nothing further there. Okay. LSL, do you have anything for us for follow-ups at this point? No? Okay. Mr. Goslett, do you have directions for us on what we're supposed to do? Oh, yeah, I guess we could do public comment on this. I didn't see anybody standing up to do public comment. Do we have anybody online? I should check there. No? Okay. All right. We've got the tour listed up here. That is at 1:30. And do we have, I don't remember where my information is at. Do we have that information you can resend out? Okay.
I mean, if we want, we can go
Yeah.
offline.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
So,
Mr. Chairman, that's all in the online materials and in your notebooks.
yeah, I knew it was somewhere. I just couldn't remember where. So, okay, Mr. Chairman, you have any closing remarks?
No, Mr. Chairman. So we got a tour of Quebec One State Historic Site. Recognizing that one of our bills, our military bills, I think what we have all 2 maybe now, is going to be focused on the federal mission. And so it's an opportunity. If you're not familiar with what the 9th Missile Wing does, it's a chance to go ahead and take a look and see an actual alert facility. And it's a state historic site. We're proud to tell that story of nuclear mission in Wyoming. So I figured that was better than bothering the folks on base who are very, very busy right now. And, you know, it's a good way to showcase what we do to and showcase that partnership between the state and the active duty Air Force. So if 1:30 works for everybody, obviously you'll probably grab some food on the way up. It's exit 39. Go to the west, follow.
25-minute drive, is that right?
Yeah, about 20 minutes. Well, depends how fast you go, but yeah.
We don't have WIDOT here. So.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the WIDOT's not here yet. So yeah, exit 39, you can do the math. So Yeah, 1:30, unless somebody needs a little bit more time, that's fine too. But, okay, cool.
All right, with that, committee, nothing further from the committee. We will see everybody around 1:30 at Quebec One, and we are adjourned.